Welcome, everyone. You are listening to and perhaps watching Calling the Audible. Mo Khan has been eaten by a cat. Joining me is the Eagle at Master Control. He is an animal of a different variety. He is also present in studio. I
You should be here too,
sorry, I
but I
should
mean,
be.
next week.
Hopefully, this is my last week ever broadcasting from the home studio. But here I am. How's it going, Eeks?
I mean, we were kind of like, obviously, week one, the setup is longer because it's getting things back into the rhythm of it, like how
It's
everything
so
works.
late.
Yeah, so we're about 2 hours late as to when we wanted to record.
Yeah.
I forgot what music we have as our intro, so that was fun. Our graphics are
It
coming in
feels
as the
like
show goes on, so this will be fun.
it feels like a long time since we've done the show. I also saw on one of the assets, Eagle, that you wrote "Winter Welcome to Winter 2022." If you
Mm-hmm.
want to show the good people.
Yep.
So what's interesting is by the fourth episode, we'll be in spring,
True.
like
Yeah,
not
that's been
season,
fun.
spring the season. So um, enjoy the last bits of winter. It's the worst parts of Montreal seasonality is the February ice and frigid cold, but probably about 3 weeks time we'll start seeing that all melt. I'm looking forward to it. So to invite everyone a little bit behind the scenes, Eagle and I barely spoke about what we're going to do today. Normally, Mokan joins me on this show. We
And writes the
typically have
script.
guests from all other divisions and writes the script. Um, Eagle and I work on another show called Hot Sauce Sports. We recorded that before this one, so it was a long day. The script is kind of up in the air. It's going to be a fun show, though. We got some stuff planned, some stuff we're going to plan as we go on. So you'll be privy to our. It's kind of a show about a show today. So I'm excited about that. You actually get to see Eagle too. Usually you'll see myself, you'll see Mo Khan. So Mo is not here this week. I will be leaving early next week, so I'm only going to be in
And
about
I'm
half the
not
show
here
next
next
week.
week either, funny enough.
Yeah, it's very transitional to start the season. We also need to train someone to do this if you can't be here next week, Eagle. So that'll be interesting. Um,
So
so
please,
first of all,
maybe
thank
just for the audience who doesn't know who you are,
yeah.
should they care about listening to you?
Oh, you absolutely shouldn't. Or consume any sports media of any sort. It's bad news. Uh, but if you're so inclined to torture yourself, my name is Piz Del Ruiz. I work for FPF. I have worked for FPF for a long time. Um, One of the things that I do is I cover the entire league on this podcast, but I also write the article for Division Six. As we'll talk about Division Six first tonight. As we go into the other divisions, I'll talk about who'll be writing the article. You, of course, can find the article corresponding to your division on www.flagplusfootball.com. Because we're starting with Division Six, it gives us the opportunity, of course, to introduce ourselves, the show, what we're doing. Eagle, I'm also not running a clock, so every 15 minutes, just yell 15 at me.
I got you.
Um, Great, appreciate that. I'll enjoy that extra bit of chaos. In terms of a style of coverage, anarchy is probably what best describes what I do. Um, I like to have a good time. I don't take sports that seriously, so the people who like me tend to share that sensibility, and people who hate me, I enjoy that so much. I really do hope to to have you yell at me, scream at me, see all sorts of nasty things, because it really helps me fuel my hatred for you in return. So please do so. I try to be at the fields now and again. So if you do see me, feel free to talk to me. Tell me about your team. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me what I got right. I'll only listen to what I got right anyway. In terms of a player, I am playing in Division Four. I'm playing for Hot Sauce Sports, the team named after Eagle and I's podcast company. And Eagle, you are the producer of the show.
That is correct. Been producing for, I want to say, 10 years now. Feels like a lot.
Yeah, we joined together-ish. Yeah, I think you started a
Together-ish is
season
the right
before I
word.
did, and you brought me in. You and Andrew Dana, who no longer works for the league, and we've been hetero life mates ever since.
Yep, and Mokan would
Um,
normally be here, but like I said, he can't be here tonight. He has other broadcasting duties that are important for his career, so we're letting him do
Yeah,
that.
they're filming him being eaten by a cat.
Yes, that is correct.
That's what's happening. They will
Sounds
eat
like
you
a good
if
Scorsese
on
movie,
devices.
usual.
Mokan no longer plays. He used to play for FPF's first dynasty, Montreal's finest, where he was the worst player. Although I always say for the media guys, our best options is usually to make us the worst players on any team. Dan Lazara notwithstanding this season. So we'll talk to a lot of the other media guys as the season goes on. As guys sort of get their bearings. These podcasts should be out Friday morning, I imagine, Eagle.
Yep.
The articles will start trickling in around then as well. The weeks end Wednesday, so by the time the articles come together, you're looking at Friday morning, Saturday morning releases. I've tried to get the guys. I also, as a side note, deal with the media team. So we all work together, of course, and I've sort of put out the messaging that I'd like to get them off Friday. It's better for everyone involved, players and the writers themselves, to get it out Friday because, of course, more people read what they've done. But I know it's a tall order. So hopefully Saturday before games is the best time. If you haven't seen it by Friday, do take a look as you're getting ready for your game because it's usually going to be up there. We also have Game of the Week, which will be a feature where we broadcast one of our games each week. Chris Rive, our camera guy, will put that forward. Join us on Instagram. Lance Daniel does a great job putting up some content for us. Some of you have already responded, and we will take a look at our media mailbag this week and see what you guys have IG'd for us, what you've decided to ask us about. It's going to span all divisions, so we'll drop that in the middle as a little bit of a break for Eagle and I. But for the next 3 hours, you have our voices to look forward to. This week, of course, we take team pictures at the field, so you'll see James Dandria and a couple of other employees roaming around the field taking pictures. We also take pictures throughout the season as well, just to make our media coverage as comprehensive as possible, make it as interesting as possible. So keep an eye out for all of that. And also, we welcome your input. Talk to us, reach out to us. If you see us at the field, if not, I'm easy to find. I'm at P De La Rocca on Instagram.
I'm at
P is
Dak Eagle, and you have at MoCon19 for Mo as well. And of course, you can always follow us at Flag Plus to check out any of the stories, any of the posts from the field. And of course, feel free to tag us in your posts so we can share them on our feed as well. And that one-handed catch that you find is sick, that your girlfriend doesn't care about, well, someone will.
Yeah, we're your real girlfriends right here. I'm also found easily on Facebook. If you want to chat about your game, just tell me what happened. It's easier for us to cover. We can't be at every field all the time, so it's easier for us to cover if you talk to us, and we're happy to hear your input. So if you have anything you want to talk about at all, feel free to hit us up on any of the social media platforms. On Twitter, I am at PsHSS, standing for, of course, Hot Sauce Sports. MoCon is, once again, MoCon19. So do reach out to us. Eagle, any other league news that I'm forgetting? Because I'm going to forget.
So a couple things specifically when it comes to rosters. I want to just remind everyone to submit your roster before your games. So to do this, it'll be under the resources tab on the website, and there's an option here for roster submit. Really simple. You fill in a form. It's going to ask you a few questions about what date was your game on, so you just enter that in essentially to the values. Once you do that, you can hit next. I think I got to pick a date in the future, so let's say 25. There you go, and it even checks for games. Let's say it's the 26th instead. This is why we have a script usually.
Yeah.
And then you pick your team name in. Let's say it was Hot Sauce Sports. You select the division that you're in. So we're going to say you're 4B, might have been A, I don't even know. Where your field is, so check your schedule, fill this in, and then it's just a free-form text. Make sure you have the player number, so do something like number 12, P's Della Rees. And you do this for all your players, including players that are new for your roster, for anyone who's injured, so just tag them as INJ, etc. And then once you're done, you just submit this, and it goes off to the appropriate person. So just want to remind everyone, do this before your games. It really helps in terms of making sure the roster you submit is accurate, it's the right players, the numbers are in, saves a lot of time for the game to get going so the scorekeeper doesn't need to chase you around, and make sure that your stats are more accurate. So absolutely, please go ahead and do this to help us out. Any questions on that piece? Because I know you actually struggle with this as a person who doesn't submit.
I've always submitted. I've never not submitted, but it is. It's not as user friendly as I'd like it to be. So hopefully we'll improve it. It has improved from season to season. So hopefully, as soon as we put the team name in, it'll know what field we're at and so on.
Yeah. The other
Um,
thing I want to talk about is the roster verification. So this first week, we've had a few cases of teams forgetting about our cap system. So for anyone who's played Madden before, this might make sense to you. But essentially, FPF has a cap system where each division has a maximum player value of your roster based on your top 6 players on offense and your top 6 players on defense as by their rating that they have. So if, for example, we're in Division 4, you need to be under 445 for Division 4A. And on top of that, your quarterback has to be under 78. So as you start typing players into this, you're going to see them hopefully come up, if I can type properly. Oh, yeah, because your actual real name here is this. That's funny.
yeah.
And so you select the correct values here. Here, for example, is Paolo. If we were to do myself, there we go. And we can start adding them in as we go through the list. You can start filling in all the details in terms of what the values actually are. I'm just going to do a few players here, and Pease, you can fill in for me. But essentially, it's going to start filling in details in terms of the different values of each person as you type it.
So there's a couple of things. One is make sure your team is cap compliant. Make sure your quarterbacks are cap compliant. Also, I don't care if a player doesn't play defense. His defensive rating counts. I don't care if a player doesn't play offense. His offensive rating counts. So it is important, of course, that your team is cap compliant. Otherwise, you will forfeit, and we will make fun of you. Also, if you don't show up to your games, you will forfeit, and we will make fun of you for the entirety of the season because literally get your grandmother to play. I don't care. Show up and honor the other team that has showed up to play. There's also a financial penalty, of course, if you forfeit, as well as earning a 60-0 forfeit if you don't show up, and a 30-0 forfeit if you are not cap compliant. But let's get into games. We'll start with Division 6, Eagle. I want to start with a team that obviously listens to the podcast. I believe they were FSU. They are now FKU for Falls Kings University. They took on Lionhearts, a team we know pretty well, Eagle. They've been around the division for a while. It was a 31-12 win for FKU. Manny Bezogias, he's earned sort of our attention in the low divisions. He put up a couple of touchdowns. On the other side, Anthony Jannenkranz took the helm as quarterback for Lionhearts. You never really know who's going to be quarterbacking the Lionhearts. Familiar names, of course, being guys like Carmelo Di Giovanni and Joe Morghese. They scored in this game as well. It's kind of what we come to expect from Lionhearts, especially early in the season. It takes them a second to sort of get their roster in order. It takes them a second to play their best football. They're the kind of team where even if they're not going to qualify for playoffs, and they may or may not, we don't know yet. But even if they don't, they're going to be a tough out as season comes around because they get better as the season goes on. They sort of get a feel for each other. And I'm curious to see if they can turn that into early season success or if they're going to have to play spoilers again because the beginning of the season looks a lot like it did in week 1.
So I'm really concerned for Lionhearts based on this performance, right? Because they've kind of been in that Tier 3, Division 6, Division E frame for a while. They've obviously learned a lot and grown as a team, but the fact that they haven't addressed their quarterback position is one problem. The other one is there's only, 14 plays that they ran on offense in this game, right? 13 attempts plus 1 run. That's not a lot of possessions. So that's really scary for me in terms of not having the ball enough to have control over it. And then that also explains why they got lit up on defense too, right? Because the ball's not in their hands most of the game and they're being driven on and, they're having points put on the scoreboard against them. So I'm concerned for this roster. They're good players. They've had time to gel over all the seasons and it seems to not bear fruit at this point.
Yeah, it is curious, and again, not solving the most important position being an issue. It shows also that not only were they not able to stay on the field, but also they weren't able to really stop FKU in a way that was meaningful, right? So they allowed FKU to completely control the game, and that's what we saw here. Before we get to a game you want to talk about, Eagle, I want to bring up this concept because we've seen this before. There are talented teams who are new to the league, and we don't know much about them. And before we know it, they're taking over the lowest divisions. And there are teams that have been around a while and they've struggled. And we look at those teams, and that you mentioned Lionhearts, Brewers are another one of these teams that have had a hard time getting it together, despite their experience. Um, and I'm looking at those teams specifically as they start the season. Are there any of the returning teams that you can see that you think will buck the trend and sort of show success and um, sort of not let these newcomers take the throne in Division Six?
So I think one team that catches my eye right away is going to be seventh rounders. Just we're gonna go take a look. That's the wrong scene. Take a look at their roster here. So they've kind of been around for a couple seasons now. But then again, they haven't really had very high success. Now this time around, they had a win over Betway Bandits, 24-6. I would imagine this is going to be a reasonably good season for them because of, again, all the same years that they've had where it's been like that middle of the pack, slightly upper tier, but really can't claim a number 1 to 4 spot in a playoff race. But I think maybe this could be the year potentially in terms of the roster being decent. They're still low cap hit, which is good. So maybe this is the run that works for them.
Yeah, that's a solid one. I was looking also at the Spanish Inquisition. The Buck brothers return. Of course, Jared Buck can't throw in this division, so Chad Buck took the lead in week 1. They tried Michael Timmons at quarterback in the fall with mixed results. He didn't play this week, so he might be the quarterback. So hopefully he learned a lot because I like the core of Benjamin Bork, Chad, and Jared Buck. Etienne de Brois is talented as well. So I'm curious to see what the week 2 roster looks like. Because they clearly they didn't have Michael Timmons, who even if he's not playing quarterback, is a valuable two-way player to have. So I'm curious to see if he'll take over as Chad Buck throws 3 interceptions in his first start. But I think despite losing to Chevalier de Rohan, I think that's going to be a team to look out for because they're a group that not only has the experience but has a lot of talent. Right off the bat. You know what I mean?
I feel like you've completely missed the reference of now people are going to expect the Spanish Inquisition. You've ruined the punchline piece.
That's true. That's true. That's my bad. That's my bad for not remembering what is now a 50-year-old joke at this point.
Tell me about that. Yep.
Uh, but Beer Knights, of course, being another team. I think they took a 32-12 win in the first week. Of course, we've been familiar with them, and now Frankie Scalzo had a great fall season. You know, he qualifies to throw in Div 6, but he's probably the top end of the Division 6 quarterbacks, I would say. Would you agree?
Yep, I would agree with that too. Granted, there's going to be a bunch of brand new teams this year, so we may be getting a quarterback out of the blue who's going to be dominant. Who knows? Division 6 is always a crapshoot when it comes to that, right? Like maybe the guy coming off the street is CFL quarterback that we've never heard of, or something in like university
also,
level or college.
If that's the case, don't register for Division 6.
I mean, if that's the case, that just means CFL has really bad marketing if we haven't heard from him.
Seriously. But yeah, so I'm curious to see how that all goes. We have a free agent squad, but I don't think it's the same free agent squad as we saw in fall because they took a loss, and I was surprised to see them. Yeah, just from the players I'm clicking on now, it doesn't seem to be the same free agent squad
so
that we saw in
this is the
fall.
Squad of players who registered for free agency, which makes a team. So the same thing that happened in fall, but obviously the people who registered as free agents in fall are no longer free agents in winter, or maybe they are, but you get the point. They have a team they could go with. So I would say this is more likely an expectation for a week 1 free agent squad like last year was kind of the exception in that they had a quarterback and they had receivers that worked and they gelled and the whole stuff, and they did really good for their first introductory season. But this is much more like growing pains, learning the game, having to, a couple people have already played before because they have existing ratings, so it's getting that team together and just trying to build that chemistry and core for that first week. So it'll come together. Just week one is always a little bit rough in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll talk about what new teams can do because we do have that in our mailbag later. Look at me, Eagle. I'm already dropping teases in week one. For a show that's planning as we go, it's pretty good.
So I'm going to go ahead and do a history card here, and we're going to go check out another game from this week played by the Demons versus the Penetrators, where Demons won 25-14. This game is interesting to me because in our fall 21 season, these teams were both brand new to the league and also played in week one to the final score of Penetrators winning 23-0. And this time around, looks like the Demons have gotten their act together and taken a win under the belt against, I guess, a similar team in some way, which to me is an interesting storyline of they're clearly improved and now they understand the game better and now they can actually play. So this is also kind of an interesting way of looking at what the Penetrators did too, where maybe they're not as polished as a few months ago.
Well, they're a team that got a lot better throughout the season. We talked about them a lot in fall because they kind of just, especially in the second half of the season where they got reseeded, they looked a lot they looked a lot better. That said, it was a lot of reliance on their defense. They had got their hands on the ball a lot, and it's just tough to read the score sheet because it appears as though they only scored 2 touchdowns but put up 25 points.
Yeah, they have running touch.
Yeah.
Question mark? It might be a stat issue here.
It started 12-0 for Demons.
So
for the game.
Maybe not so successful then. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, interestingly they would have lost the game if not for those 12 points. They would have lost 14-13. But still, a lot of positive buzz at the end of last season. So whether or not it paid off here, it's still trending in the right direction. So I'm hoping that they can continue to do so.
Also, admittedly, you play a game very differently if you're already up 12-0 before the game starts.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I've played quarterback. For those who don't know, some of the worst games I've played are games where I get spotted a lead because you don't have the same killer instinct. And some of the best games I've played are games where I have had 5 guys, right? So it's really interesting how that can impact the game. So hopefully we'll see more from Demons. But Adam Antel struggled despite, like I said, a team that's been on the rise recently. So do we want to move on to Div 1 and 2?
Yeah, let's go ahead and check that out. There's an interesting storyline in Division 1 in that we have a team that's been added to the division post-registration. This very rarely happens, but this is an exceptional case because we had a few teams drop out in other divisions and we had a team looking to play in Division 1, so we've adjusted the schedules a little bit to accommodate them. So Gryffindor is added to the schedule. They're playing not this week 1 obviously, but they will have games coming up, so that will reshape the entire Division 1 landscape at this point.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Gryffindor when we get to the mailbag because we have a specific question about that as well. On a personal note, I'm happy to see Flagmon back. They're probably my favorite FPF franchise. They have yet to hold spring or winter hardware, if I'm not mistaken. I don't believe they've won a championship yet. They lost the All-Stars week 1. Their kryptonite since they've arrived in FPF has been Kevin Wyeth, and that's no exception here. Kevin Wyeth playing basically a perfect game as All-Stars beat Flagmon 38-29. The connection of Alex Nadeau-Puis to Samuel Nadeau-Puis paid off, but of course not enough. Kevin Kaya added to the roster, which is a huge addition, both in name value, but also the dude is tall. So that's a nice benefit to them on a team that's already got some size. Kevin Wyeth, of course, brings back a lot of familiar pieces. Matt Kerouac, Pat Jerome, Chris Millar has been playing with them in recent seasons. Quade Johnson, of course, on the roster as well as with Paul Lapierre. Sorry. So good mixture of size and speed as well as whatever Matt Kerouac brings, which I would imagine is what's the opposite of handsomeness? Just regular lookingness.
Regularness is probably the word. Yeah.
Regularness. He brings regularness to the roster, which is nice to have. Because if you're too handsome, you can't win a title. It's that's why Eagle hasn't won any hardware in FPF. Just too handsome. It's a scientific fact. So there is that. There's just something about that team that makes me happy. I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that Eagle. Flagman's like just fun guys. You know what I mean? They're just dudes who have a good time when they're out there. And at the highest competition in FPF, that's always fun to see.
Do we think they're going to have success in this season with all the teams coming back? I mean, it's always that weird question because we expect there to be dominant teams every year in Division 1. But, I mean, considering the 5 that are there now, is there a clear standout amongst them?
Braves?
Question mark?
Braves All-Stars are really good. I can see them dropping a future game to Phlegma Sac down the line, though. Whether it be are there repeated games? Probably not with all the crossovers, right?
Good question. Let's check out the schedule here just to see. I think there are
week one, and we're building the ship in the air, boys. So we're going to be asking questions as we go.
Definitely, there's some repeats. I can see some.
Yeah, they played actually the last game. That to me, without even having seen the first game in person, that feels like a trap game to start with, right? If Flagma Sac with all the energy, they might need a win to get into playoffs. All-Stars will likely have it locked up. And look, without having played in who knows how long, Flagma Sac did put up 29 points against All-Stars, right?
And it looks like every team is going to play each other twice, and then there's 2 crossover games to Div 2. That seems to be the updates for the schedule here. Now, that may not be consistent everywhere, but that seems to be what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Correct. So I'm saying, though, it's impressive that because you ignored my question, or not question, but statement. I think it's impressive Flagma Sac put up 29 points week 1 against All-Stars with all the time they've had off. And they faced them last week of the season. I see that as a trap game. What are your thoughts? Since you didn't get my, you didn't seem to notice that I was trying to hint, Eagle, this is your time to speak on the topic.
I did not at all. I think the question to me is, the question to me is going to be Alex Nadeau-Pugh's quarterback rating is one of the higher ones in the league because of the fact that he hasn't played in so long and hasn't, quote, suffered the drop of being a high-tier quarterback that flexes between that 92 to 98 range, essentially. And I'm curious to see, as the season goes on, if his system is still going to work or if the game has shifted away from that style and maybe to something else. Because we know the plays that work all the time, but they still get adapted depending on how people play defenses or who you're playing against. So his classic targets of Anthony Valderrame wasn't there this week. Does that change the way he calls his playbook? Felix Prévost wasn't there. Some somewhat new people on the roster, I guess you could say. So does he get more chemistry with them? In which case, do they have to, the defenses have to focus on shutting them down? First off, against Braves, are they going to turn it into a shootout potentially? So I don't really know. I actually can't really answer your question. I would imagine they'll be okay, but who knows?
So your answer is, you know what? Maybe. They take on Outlaws next week, so they get their first crossover game fairly early, although that is not a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. We'll talk a little bit about future games as well at some point, but for now, I did want to take a look at KGP. This is a team we tend to rag on early in the season. We kind of don't see how they're going to be successful. Yet they're the holders of, is it back-to-back-to-back titles?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, they've three-peated. They've three-peaten.
Yes, that is a word.
That is a word in this case. And Phil Cutler had 2 incompletions this game. We see the return of Greg Stern and the Incredibles. That they're going to be a fun team. I don't know if they're a little out of their depth playing in Div 2 and then having those two crossover games.
You know, I'm kind of with you. Now, also, this roster looks very light, right? For the Incredibles, it feels like they don't have enough guys ready to play in this Division 2 area. But then again, if you actually take a look at the full roster they have, they were missing Nicky Papich and Demario Cooper on this squad. That makes them a
Yeah.
little bit better. Does that make them super competitive? Maybe. A little bit
Well,
more?
Papich
Question mark?
Papich gives them a dimension in like just how indefensible he is in the air. Um, but it would have helped against KGP, for example, who are a team who are a smaller group of guys, right? That said, KGP go out and add Mathieu Lapage. You know, Cooper is really good and Papich is really good. Are they the same level of impact as Mathieu Lapage?
No. The short answer of that one. I mean, Lepage is pretty unstoppable on this roster and everything. I mean, in this game, actually, Julie Paiement actually stole the show with 3 touchdowns on 4 completions. But Lepage, I mean, he'll carry his weight in this game.
I kind of like, Julien Paiement for years was like low key the best rusher in FPF, and
now he's
is
low-key
on his
the best
way.
snapper in FPF too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He's not like he's probably going to be the 3rd rusher inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Easily.
And then just decided, oh, by the way, I'm also going to be this dominant offensive weapon because I'm awesome. Just out of nowhere, and he's the most unassuming character on the field. It's really cool to see. Like the guy was rushing in Div 4, it seems like a handful of seasons ago.
Are you a little bit surprised to see Dylan Garber be as good of a receiver than he is quarterback?
Dylan's really quick, and he's not going to excel at this level if he's your number 1 guy, but he's definitely a guy who can win against your 3rd or 4th defender, unless your team is absolutely stacked. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, so they have Paiement, they have Lepage. Garfinkel's speed is ridiculous, so they have a guy who can work in the open areas, and then they have Dylan Garber, who's kind of the speedy possession receiver, who just understands concepts, understands spacing, and he, if you're playing zone, he understands where to be in the concept, and if you're playing man, he's quick enough to beat some of your 3rd and 4th best receivers just out of his break. So that combined with having a guy who doesn't get the credit he deserves, but Phil Cutler, who is one of the better passers in the league at this point, is undeniable at this point. You gotta give him the credit for developing into this talent. Yeah, I'm gonna say they are back-to-back champions, by the way, because they do have 2 championships, and the unupdated FBF Bowl Cup should be in there as well.
That's very true. Last question I have for you on this. Vince Nardone, defensive captain, I would imagine, on this squad.
Yeah, has to be.
There's only 2 pass attempts that were incomplete, and I don't know if they were defended or not because there's no PDs on this. How do you fix a defense if it just your personnel couldn't keep up, and that's you write this one off, or
it's the personnel in this game? Like, so the where I think the pieces on offense that matter most were there. James Ohio, Vince Nardone, Chris Miard, Terry Tam, of course, being a really good snapper. Those pieces are all enough to win in Division 2. It's less so the case on defense when you're missing Demario Cooper and Papich, because that's going to make a difference when they have all their pieces there. It's a small roster, right? So if you're missing 2 players, you all of a sudden are now playing in the Division 4 game with Terry Tam. On defense, Terry's fine. He's not a shutdown guy. Greg Stern having to play defense as well in this game. I think they were better served having those other 2 pieces.
Yep, I would agree with you on that. Just wanted to see what you
thought.
I do have another question for you in general, Pease. For Division 2, we have crossover games. What teams do you think stand a chance? I mean, granted, we don't have to look at the exact schedule of who they're playing, but who would
Yeah.
you potentially bet on if you're looking at, let's say they bump themselves into Division 1 because they can. KGP is probably on the list. Urgence
So
Médic, potentially.
firstly, let's start with the fact that you know, the easy way to answer this, how do we plan this, is who's playing Gryffindor, because they're a huge question mark coming in, right? Um, Actually, the quote unquote obvious ones, KGP, hashtag NR, and Urgence Médic. Urgence Médic proved to me in fall they deserve to be in Division One. I don't know how they still fit here. Um, all hooks are, I don't think, seasoned enough to be at that level. And then a couple of ones that like are not as obvious. The Apocalypse, because of the fact that they have one of the smarter quarterbacks in Jeff Rosenblatt, and they surrounded him with pieces that really fit his style. I know he can score with the other team, so it comes down to whether or not they can get a stop or end with the ball. And Terror Squad. Terror Squad's been overlooked. They have a bit of an inconsistent roster over time, but they have both pilons. Tam Villadeth returns. Is he back officially from injury, or he will return during the season?
I think he's going to be back soon. I don't know if he's officially allowed to play yet. Did he get a GP this game? Maybe, but it might be like just for attending then, eh?
He well, they didn't play this week. They
Oh,
didn't play week
yeah,
one.
that's right. Yeah. I
But
don't
a
know
couple
for
of
sure.
names. So like they have like the two Pilons and Tam Villadeth. Those are the familiar names, right? As well as Joe Duclair, Jasmine Ryu. These are guys we know. But from lower divisions, they bring up Nicholas Grappini, who we know can play, Vincent Malo, who can play, and of course we all know Tommy Roldy Trojados, who is an absolute monster. This is probably the best Terror Squad roster I've seen in a while.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's
This is
just really
definitely a good one.
complete.
Like I
They
was gonna
use the
say,
cap.
we used to put them in Division 1, and we would say like, oh yeah, they're a lower tier team and everything. But this is
Yeah.
a very good roster. That's basically the same one they used to have, just with the Pinos essentially.
With the pillows, and they use the cap in a way that I find very intelligent. They didn't stick to the same pool of players. They took a quote unquote chance, let's say on Nick Grappini, but you and I know he can play at this level. They took a they add they added the right pieces, in my opinion. I think, provided that Tanville Death can throw or throw soon, they're one of the teams that I look to as guys who can overthrow a Division One team.
Uh, Party Crashers. I know we haven't talked about them, but they're the only other team with a win this past week, led by Fred Dupuis. The roster looks pretty stacked, honestly. Do you think they're gonna be good, or is this first week just a fluke because they had a matchup against Team Swoosh?
It's a good roster. I wouldn't say stacked. I think it's a fair roster for Division Two. They're probably, like we just talked about Incredibles and sort of poked holes a little bit. I'd say they're probably on par, if not a little worse, even than the top end of of Incredibles. Fred Dupuis, it always comes down to people use this term disparagingly, and I don't mean it that way, but rather the his game management, his in-game management, how he'll react to being down, how he manages having a lead. I think these things are going to be important, you know. And other than that, it's how this all comes together. Guillaume Ward, Philanger missing week one games. So who's on this roster for real, and who are guys who are just filling in? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think there's a lot of questions. That's why I didn't list them, because I think there's too many question marks. But the fact that they won week one shows a couple things. It shows, for example, that they can win even if their expected players aren't there in the first week. And it shows that Frederic Dupuis, despite again taking some time off from FPF, came back and is playing some of his best football. So if he can manage those situations the way he did in week one, Party Crashers might be a team that surprised me. But I actually think that they'll struggle to even be middle of the pack in the division, because
All right.
Div 2 looks really strong to me this season.
It really does. I mean, I know like the crossover games are going to change the schedule a little bit because everyone should be expected to lose. But if someone gets a win, they would jump up the standings in theory, right? Like think about it. If
Yeah.
an 8-2 is considered perfect, almost in a way, 9-1 would be excellent.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I'd like to see how Outlaws actually fare in their crossover games. Like they take on Flagma Sack, and I think Flagma Sack's can be very uh, interested to see how Outlaws perform because they're not a team they're familiar with, right? So that lack of familiarity, I think, is going to throw them off a little bit. And Outlaws, to me, have a stacked roster. Um, in terms of athleticism and guys who can play at this level. Like Vincent Benjamin, to me, is finally playing in a division that's worthy of his caliber. We've seen Zach Swern play Division Two before. We've seen Isaiah Lard play Division Two before. Justin Lerner is a freak athlete. Guys like James Langshaw and Ariel Liberati are great lower division pulls. Marvin Steinberg, it's just top to bottom athletic, right? So how does sort of a team that relies on just football knowledge and different type of athleticism in in terms of muscularity and strength. How will they compete with the flat out speed and ball winning ability of Outlaws?
So,
So
Peace,
we'll see how that looks.
I have a awkward question for you. This
Okay,
is the last year your age is going to have the number 3 in it.
I'm trying to hide it, man. I got a haircut today and everything.
So, when are you going to register for the best new old division that we have, Division 35 plus?
Actually, a question I should have asked you before the podcast started, but because we're like I said, we're building the ship in
Building
the
the show as
air.
we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there an East End 35 plus, or are all the games still in Bay Durfee?
I think they're all in Bay Durfee. I think that plan, not that
So
it fell through, but I don't think there was enough teams with the whole pandemic stuff to get that squad going.
yeah,
That's my
all the games are in Bay
understanding.
Durfee.
Yeah.
They might as well be on Mars for me. So I'm gonna have to be covering 35 plus by correspondence. So I urge guys to reach out to me, and we'll of course break down what we see based on game recaps and what we get from scorekeepers and so on. But definitely talk to us because it makes it easier for us to cover your division. I'll try and get Mo not to speak disparagingly about the division because honestly, I find the pace of play in 35 plus to be pretty impressive, especially when you consider that a lot of the best quarterbacks in FPF traditionally were a little bit older anyway. It's only recently we've seen some of the younger guys fare well. But yeah, it'll have to be when there's an East End 35 plus. I think at that point, Eagle, you'll be eligible to be playing with me in 35 plus as well.
Most definitely. Yeah.
So, how old are you now, anyway? Since you put me on blast,
Not when the point where my age will not have a 3 in it.
Dick.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, family show. It's not Hot Sauce Sports. My mistake. We just talked about Outlaws, but old age Outlaws with Stephen Harper-Sod take a loss to Monster. Craig O'Brien, one of the sort of grandfather quarterbacks in FPF that I was talking
I was going to
about.
say Godfather quarterback, but grandfather works too.
Grandfather works. He's like OG FPF. Not only one of the nicest dudes in FPF, one of the smartest quarterbacks. This game had to have some of the smartest play calling in the division period, right? Between Stephen Harper-Sod and Craig O'Brien, kind of new world and old world FPF colliding. So that's super cool to see. But Craig O'Brien just being able to get it done. But a very competitive game, 26-25. We see Josh Levine return to FPF as well as Kevin Kasai. Those guys, of course, from MFL. We always say it's not really competition between us and MFL. It's an open community. We're happy to see our teams and our players play there. We're happy to see them play with us. As long as people are playing flag football, it's good for all leagues. So I'm happy to see them back, and I'm happy to see their league thriving as well. Anthony Seja is a nice addition for Old Age Outlaws as well, but just a little too much on the other end. And I think it really came down to the wisdom that comes with the age of Craig O'Brien as he comes leads a second half comeback to win the game. And of course, it's important to note that he didn't start the game at quarterback. It was Andy Peterkin taking snaps to start, and that game drew my attention. What drew your attention to the game?
Well, this game specifically, I think what's interesting is if we scroll down to the defensive section, we see 8 different players with defensive stats. So that means almost everyone is getting reps on defense. Couple things that stand out to me: Carl Denis, 2 sacks. Constant monster when it comes to putting pressure on quarterbacks, so doing his job like usual. But then maybe the more interesting question is, were they potentially down early on in the first half, essentially, and then in the second half they made the defensive adjustments and changed their rotation? So instead of being like, one person on, one person off, they're like, okay, we're going to put our best 6 on the field now and try and shut them out for the second half, and that's how the comeback was driven. So to me, that's the interesting one, right, with Tossie and Cooper getting interceptions. Were they brought in specifically for that, and they were on the bench kind of like taking it easy? Are they going to be the ones kind of leading it? Paul LaPierre, only 3 tackles, which is lower than you would expect for him in a game like this.
I don't think it's low considering the way Stephen Harper likes to attack the intermediate area. So like Paul LaPierre is most likely playing in flat, so he's going to be attacking the area behind him. So Paul LaPierre is just picking up whenever Harper has to check down, right? So that's kind of how I see it. Monster also started with the ball in the second half. So, that's an advantage. But still, coming from behind to beat a Stephen Harper-led team is no joke. That's fun to see. Was there another game that caught your
eye? Let me go take a look at them just to see here. My mouse is being a little bit slow. Maybe when we get into something like Spitfire versus Shenanigans, just the other team that played in this one over here. I'm interested in this one specifically because we have a Tony Curry-led squad versus a Carmen Peliche-led squad. So the fireworks are definitely going to erupt in the trash talk for sure. Definitely an interesting game. Donald Shepard back for this one. There's rumors, it's not confirmed yet, but he might be coming back from Toronto to be in Montreal full-time, which means that he'll be back in the league and potentially a full-time addition to here, and maybe going back to Division 1, going back to All-Stars and the Kevin Wyeth connection, ? So that's interesting.
Of course, you see him in this game. It's like, yeah, of course Don Shepard showed up, just randomly shows up, without having played for years and scores 2 touchdowns. That's obviously what he's going to do. My question, of course, is how long he'll last. Carmen Peliche and Spitfire, of course, have been stalwarts in 35+. Andrew Carruthers had a huge game. Andrew Carruthers is one of these guys who's not a well-known sort of FPF superstar, but a guy who's been productive pretty much every time he's played. He just hasn't played as much as a lot of other guys. And on the other side, you have Shane Williams, right, which is the opposite, where everyone in FPF circles is familiar, of course, with Shane Williams. And guys like Jason Prince to Tony Corey. I will say, I think like Montreal Spitfire has sort of a well-rounded roster, whereas I think Shenanigans they just seem to be missing a dude. You know what I mean? There's a bit of dynamism, I believe, missing from that roster. It's a small roster again, so they probably can add a piece. They definitely seem to be on the lighter side of the cap. So I think if Tony Corey and knowing how many people he does in the league, it would not surprise me to see him add sort of one deep threat for JLE. And I think that's going to, or even maybe just a guy who's quick and can operate in space. Which of course is funny in 35+ because those are rarer to find than it is to find in the FPF, the regular divisions. But if they can add that, of course, I think that rounds out the roster a little bit. But the roster as constructed is a roster I would pick to lose to Montreal Spitfire every time.
And I have another team. Forget the game this week, but just want to check it out because it's going to be the most annoying team to reference every single time. The team is called FPF.
Yeah,
I hate this team name, but they're a team. And I'm looking at the roster.
Least creativity ever.
I'm looking at this roster, and I'm trying to figure out if I like it or if I hate it because all the names are familiar, but very rarely do you see them mixed together. So I don't know what to make of this team. What do you think?
It does seem to be a bizarre combination of players, um, just in temperament, right? Between Brad Evans and Kevin Kusai, there's not more two opposite people. But I can weirdly see both of them wearing Hawaiian shirts on the same
Yeah,
cruise.
true, true. I can see it.
Like it doesn't even matter where the cruise is going. It could be an Alaskan cruise, but they'll be wearing Hawaiian shirts because they're on vacation. I can see it. Um, it's I. You're entirely right. Familiar names in that we've known Vince Mancini and Kareem Yasmin forever. Craig O'Brien, of course, quarterbacking the team. And
But like you literally
they
have 5 different quarterbacks here, all of which are very good QBs. So it's like QB by commission type of thing. Like, okay, draw straws at the beginning of the game.
what do you mean on FPF?
Yeah.
Oh, I would, but always the best of the group, right?
Yeah, but maybe he doesn't want to play QB here. Maybe Evan wants a few reps. Maybe Yoni is like, you know what, guys, I'm feeling it today. Can I string it? I don't know.
Maybe. But either way, on the other, I don't think they'll struggle as much as Eugene McLaren did in this game, throwing 4 interceptions. It this is see to me this is a game between weird rosters. The other side, Brody Windsor, are teams that is a team we recognize the names, but it's a lot of names we haven't seen for a while, right?
Yeah,
Brian
like
Martin
Brian
is a
Martin and
guy.
Joel Watson being from the
Yeah.
old core of oh shit, I remember this.
Um,
Warhawks.
Warhawks. They had the worst. I don't remember if you remember this Eagle. The Warhawks once in Division 5 had the worst schedule ever. I think their average, like the teams they were playing against were like 75% win percentage or something. Like the last like 4 weeks they played like teams that either went 10-0, 9-1, or 8-2.
Yeah,
Um,
I do
so
remember
that's
that. Yeah.
that's the last time I remember the Warhawks, but and that's probably the last time I remember seeing him, seeing Brian Martin and Jeff Trudeau makes an appearance on this team as
I
well.
was
So
gonna say
that's
J.F.
gonna
Trudeau,
be cool.
formerly of Prestige Worldwide, and has danced around
Yeah,
in so many teams and everything.
I
Yeah,
think he
that's
played
the.
for Thunder as well.
I just went to go check his player profile. He's on every single team ever created in FPF. Like, just
Yeah,
come look at the list of the teams and just the blast from the past. Quite literally, as you go through this list here, in terms of all the different names, you're like, oh, I remember that team. He even played for Lockdown. I don't even remember that.
I actually remembered that. I actually remembered that's actually I think I met him when he was playing with you.
That's funny.
Oh, and funny enough, he played for Blast from the Past, which was quarterbacked by Craig O'Brien. So a lot of familiar faces on this roster in this game, and that familiarity, of course, did turn out to be a win in the favor of FPF by a score of 47-34. And that's all we're looking for is wins for FPF. That takes us to the end of our first hour. When we come back, we're going to get into some of the other divisions as well as the FPF mailbag. So if you do watch the show on its whole is a weird sentence, but I'm really tired. So if you watch on the whole, please join us for our second hour of FPF coverage on Calling the Audible, Hour 2.
And my signature line, we're back.
Yes, very artistic, very artistic. Thank you for those who joined us for the first hour. This is the second hour of Calling the Audible, the FPF podcast. I am your host for today, Piers Delariz. Joining me is the Eagle at Master Control. Mo Khan is at a sex party and cannot attend because our show requires clothing. It's the only thing we require,
I,
actually.
I I don't even know what to say to that. And arguably, if we don't, because it's only our upper torsos. So I mean, Peas, are you wearing
Yeah.
pants right now? Don't let our audience.
So it's hour 2. I'm wearing pants.
Okay.
Hour
But
3,
hour
there's
three,
no chance. No chance I'm wearing pants for hour 3. And they're jeans too. Like they're not even like sweatpants. I'm wearing like pants with a button. So it's serious. You know it's serious when there's a button. So just quickly before we get into it, for those just watching division, if you're just watching for your division in hour 2, where we will discuss Division 5, Division
Coeds.
Coeds, as well as finally
Division
getting to the
3.
mailbag that we. But isn't it 4 and 3?
No, we're gonna do
What's in the
3.
last hour?
We're gonna do 3. 4 is gonna go at the end because 4 is bigger.
But 4 and what? Oh, 4 and women's.
4 women's and then our mailbag. Yeah.
So mailbag is the last thing of the show.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So stay
What I said
tuned for the
before.
mailbag. I
Remember,
wasn't
we're
listening.
building this as we go along. We have no script this week. It's free form.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mokan.
It's free for all. Yeah, and well, again, we're paying back Mo by I'm missing half the show next week, and you're missing the entire show.
Yep.
So we'll get Mo back. We'll get Mo back that way. So for those who don't know and are new, despite not being in the introduction division, if you're in Coed 1 or 2, or if you're in Division 5 or Division 3, please note that the player profile pictures are going to be done this week. So take this much effort for those listening. I put my fingers very close together to look a little decent, because if you don't, we don't care. So you'll just look terrible on the website, and that picture will probably last forever. And you'll end up having to look like Simon Dagenet's profile picture for the rest of the time.
True.
So nobody wants that. But yeah, so we'll get into Division 5 to start, unless there's any other announcements you want to make, Eagle.
No, for anything else, refer back to our previous chapter where we go through all the league news and updates. We have information about how to submit your roster, how to verify your roster, and make sure you have numbers for all your players and everything. But that's pretty much the main stuff when it comes to that. I'm not going to do it in detail.
I forgot something already.
Go on.
Division 1 and 2, which we did in the last hour, is going to be covered in article format by Brent Botkin, as he has done for the past couple of seasons and continues to do a great job. We did what other division in the first hour? Division 6? Oh, I'm writing Division 6.
And I had 35 plus.
35 plus. Carmen Palice is writing that article. Carmen, of course, knows the division in great detail. I love that the games are not at the same time as the show like they were last winter season that we played.
Was fun, though, because we would just call random players on their phone and be like, give us a score update, and then we'd hang up.
Yeah, like, hey, so what's happening in your game? And that was the extent of our coverage. So it's cool to actually be able to cover the division properly. I'm sure the players appreciate that better than us just basically making a mockery of it. But that's for those who don't know, that's how we affect change in FPF. Is Eagle and I are agents of chaos, and Mokan loves coming along for those rides. And what we do is we make very uncomfortable situations, so Rob is forced to make changes. So you're welcome. You owe it to us. But now we're getting into Division 5. Division 5 has 2 writers. I'm going to get this in front of me, Eagle, because I don't want to make any mistakes.
And to be clear, they are different writers for different reasons, right? So Division 5 is actually split into 2 subdivisions of 5A and 5B.
But it is a single writer for both 5s.
Exactly, right. So regardless of which one you're in, the same people will be covering you, but we have a language difference between them.
Absolutely. We have Frank Teoli Colatrella covering in English. In French, Manu Allard Roy joins us for our French coverage. I'm happy to have French coverage again. Believe it or not, despite the fact I'm an Anglophone, I do speak French. I do like our French content. I think our French content is very important. I recognize we have a large Francophone community, so we're super happy to be servicing them. If you want me to spend more of Rob's money and have more divisions covered in French, please write to me, because I love spending Rob's money. It's my favorite thing to do. And also it helps us cover the league better. It's hard to give writers more than one division. I can tell you from personal experience, the articles take a lot of time. So Division 5, be happy that you got 2 people writing. I'm excited to see both Frankie's return and Manu's first offering in FPF. Although, no, that's the Div 4. I'll get to Div 4 later. And we'll talk about the writers as we move on into those divisions. But in the meantime, Eagle, was there a Division 5 game that caught your eye?
I haven't looked through most of the games just yet, but I have kind of skimmed through 5A specifically here in terms of the conferences, East, West, North, South, and everything. I'm interested in this division this time around because we have a lot of teams that were either in that kind of like Division D spot from previous seasons. We have a few that have potentially moved up from Division 6 or E from the previous seasons that have come in here. And we have some veteran teams that have kind of dropped down from Division 4, Division C as well. So I'm curious to see, before we get into like specific games, which teams you think are going to be interesting to watch. Short list for me is Pincellos, Bandidos, Ghosts, and Ravens, just because those names we're familiar with.
So what's interesting is a lot of the quarterbacks who were successful in Division 5 in the past moved up, right? They were moved up because their cap numbers went up. Whether it's guys like Chris Rive, other names are not coming to mind, but or Ben McMahon, for example, is another one. As we see, Vultures 2.0.
Well, Ben McMahon is technically in Virtues 2.0, but he's not eligible to be QB, so that changes the roster entirely. Yeah.
Same with Ghosts, right? Like Gab Wiseman obviously can't throw. Neither can Kevin Lubin. So we see Jamal Roach coming up from a successful campaign in Division E of throwing 4 Ghosts and having a great start. Like he completed 92% of his passes in the first week, right? So it's cool to see this new group of quarterbacks, and I'm curious to see how they will progress throughout the seasons. Pincellos is one of those teams moving up. They start with a tie. They actually have an interesting situation on their roster as Jonathan Harrod, who's one of the fastest players in FPF, and all around good dude. I've played with him on 2 teams. Dude gets hurt a lot. He's got to be like the Anthony Davis of a lower division FPF at this point. Like he always seems to be going down. Has a lot of leg issues. Perhaps related to his speed. So they
perhaps
do have some cap space.
Look at that.
It looks like that in person too. But yeah, no, when you looked at this team to start, you said, okay, well, they add Jonathan Harrod to a receiving core that already had a physical receiver in Jordan Ferry, a guy who can kind of do it all in Jocelyn Calix. How would they fare? And then from the get-go, they lose a guy who's, not a huge cap hit, so it's not entirely easy to replace him either. So I'm curious to see what they'll do. So if anyone's looking for a team to play on, I can add some dimensionality to this roster. This is a team to look at because Vince Romano's improved as a play caller. He's improved as a quarterback. The team sort of, after winning a spring championship, got their cage rattled a little bit in fall, which is important. That's how you get better, right? If you just play teams that are worse than you, you're not going to improve. So I actually think that was good for them. Both things, like winning the championship against Ravens and then coming along to sort of having to struggle a little bit. I'm curious to see how they'll recover from that. But definitely will need another piece, I think, to be truly competitive. Otherwise, they're going to have the same kind of troubles that they had. You mentioned Ravens, Eagle. I just faced them in the fall championship, and I was surprised to see Joel Hull still able to throw in Division 5. That's comical if you see my arm and you see Joel's arm.
He squeaks in right under the radar, right? Because, it happens that way.
Matthew Hill is a genius at building lower division rosters. And this wasn't anything like captain related. They just squeaked in under the wire, and he just had to build a team around that. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't a request or anything. The dude legitimately qualifies to be in this position. They got off to a decent start. They beat the Mighty Six 19-18, despite 3 dropped interceptions by Alexis Dubois. He was lucky enough that 2 of them were counted as PDs. Let's put it that way. Rough outing for our colleague.
I know the feeling of those, right in your chest and on the floor. It happens more often than we want. So.
He's actually a really good receiver too, and he's the kind of guy who will never drop a ball on offense, but on defense, it's 50-50 for whatever reason. Just brains. That's what happens to your brain, I guess.
It happens.
But yeah, and the other quarterback I'm curious to see actually, Eagle, and we've talked about this at length both on the show and in frustration off the show as well. Is are you get what are is Lockdown 5A or 5B?
B.
Oh, okay, so we'll get to that later because I was going to say that this is going to be an interesting opportunity, but we'll talk about that when we get to 5B.
Well, you want to have
Um,
some fun for 5A? We can talk about Alex Aquila a little bit, who is currently playing for
nice.
the REIT, which, by the way, this is always our fun part of the season. What do you think REET stands for? And I actually haven't come up with a good acronym just yet, so
We're going to go to Urban Dictionary.
I tried that
Gonna
too. I did not find anything. That's why I'm confused. I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. Well, then obviously, what the REIT stands for is the rectangular Edwards and extraterrestrials.
Okay. I mean, it works for me. I literally can't come up with anything else. I really don't know what this potentially is. All I know
So
is
you're
that
saying
REIT is not a word in the Scrabble dictionary.
what you're saying is it a Wordle? Is it Wordle complement though? Can you enter
No,
it if
because
it's
Wordle's
REITs?
5 letters, you chode.
But is it? But it could be REITs. It could be plural. Maybe REITs can be pluralized.
It's not a real word. It can't be a Wordle word then.
Well, we'll have to find out. We'll see. We'll see every morning whether or not I'll keep playing REITs and see what it generates. I'll see if it's if it turns out to not be a wasted turn from moving forward.
So
But
I,
the
I
thing,
brought up this team because they played against Balls Deep and won 26-24 against, you would describe Balls Deep as a pretty solid squad in terms of the overall roster, right? Justin Weir as quarterback, Matthew Peacock, Ryan Dobbs-Garnett, Tyler McPherson, Curly McCourt, Jonathan Weir. Basically a roster from previous seasons that were pretty competitive. So to see the Reed come in, bring in the Sparagna brothers,
yeah.
dominate in this game. Of course, my doppelganger Alex Aquila playing in this game as well. So yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts in terms of what to think in terms of these results.
Um, Not surprising. I think Balls Deep is gonna be a team that kind of scores at about this clip. And that means they'll be susceptible from time to time to drop games. Justin Weir is talented. And having a receiving core that features Matthew Peacock and Ryan Dobbs-Garnett. Curly McCourt is a great two-way player for this division. Underutilized in FPF in general, but they're gonna need uh, to generate more turnovers, and they're gonna need to solve the issue of quarterbacks being able to run on them because you're going to see that a lot in low divisions. Santino Sparagna is a great athlete. He scored 2 touchdowns on the ground to match 2 in the air.
He almost has
Um,
as many rushing yards as he does passing yards.
that's what they're going to be, though. That's what the REIT is going to be. They're talented. The names are not as familiar, uh, but they do have sort of like a tackle pedigree and now some flag experience. So they're not going to be an easy out any week this season. And I think these are teams like this is what to expect. If Balls Deep would have won this game 26-24, it's not surprising. They lost the game that with that score, it's not surprising either. I don't think either is completely dynamic on offense. Both will require athleticism and defense to help win the game. But this time around, it was the REIT, those rectangular Edwardian extraterrestrials winning the game.
And the other game I wanted to take a look at what came from 5E. It's very meta, literally. Metaverse playing against the Goofy Goobers in week 1. Metaverse winning 25-24. What's interesting to me in this game is it's a roster of Jonathan Perez, Noah Groper, Jacob Bowman, some common names that you would
Boydman.
say in terms of, Boyman, sorry. Versus Russell Schwartz, who, as much as he's been a quarterback for like tanking for Tua in a couple games, the SC LSU Mud Dogs back in winter as well, hasn't really had success as a quarterback. And this game actually being his first one in his career where he goes over 50% completion rate for the season, essentially, right after one game. So I'm curious to see what you think of this roster. Obviously, Kevin Smuda being on Goofy Goobers as well, helping them
That's
out
not the
in terms of
name.
a size thing.
That's not the name that even struck me. the name that struck me, the stat line that struck me is Max Bira, one catch, one target, 7 yards. What are you doing not throwing the ball to Max Bira? The
I don't know.
dude
Maybe you're
is a
resting him for
madman witch.
defense. I don't know. Just
Ah, I guess he did get a PD in the game. To me, Max Bira is a guy you get involved constantly. I'm curious to see if Kobe Bira is even if the genetic code reached as far as Kobe, because if he's half the player Max Bira is, he's going to be awesome. Russell, Mikey Schwartz, having played together in the past before. This is the Goofy Goobers team that featured. I don't remember his name. He plays in Division Two now, or did play in Division Two. Blonde quarterback, long hair, good athlete.
that could be a
You'll
lot
come
of
to.
people, though.
I know. It's not helpful. I'm concerned Terry Tam of Hot Sauce Sports fame is going to buy my house in the metaverse, and I don't know what to do about it
It's very possible, honestly.
because it's the thing he would do. Just a jerk move. But for metaverse themselves, Jonathan Perez has improved at quarterback. The team is missing a key piece in Dondre Borden, who is not on the roster, it seems. Noah Groper, of course, familiar player. Jacob Boydman, to me, has always been the most underused snapper in FPF. But this is a team that has played together for a while, and Goofy Goobers is sort of guys who've played together but now have reformed their team. So I'm happy to see them put up 24 in their first week back. Um, but I think we've yet to see either of these teams sort of kick into gear. We're not going to see Max Bira get one target a game, and we're not going to see Jonathan Perez be that sloppy with the ball in future games. So I'm curious to see how these two teams sort of pan out moving forward.
Do we want to look
If
at
we,
5B as an overview as well, just to see where it's at in terms of the overall standings? I think it's a same general term in terms of teams that have moved up, and more of those Division 6 teams kind of end up in the breakdowns of the teams that got upgraded, and then a few other ones that sit. So off the top of the list here, Save a Horth were moved up from the previous season. Save the Turftles were moved up from the previous season.
well,
Trailer Park Boys is here.
Steve
Warriors is
Horse, Steve
here.
Horse started to fall. They didn't really move up, right? Like it's
Yeah,
five,
it's that
six. I think.
arguable, like, I mean, I always look at it as the team that starts in the lowest tier slash division. To go up by a seat is always a good sign. So that's exciting in a sense. But yeah, like, again, a lot of familiar names or teams that have moved up. A lot of teams that are still here. Your Threat Level Midnights, your Lockdowns on the list. Air Force One, it's nice to see them back as well. Not
I would say
Mustangs.
it's not nice to see Air Force One in Division Five, and especially not 5B. This team is too good to be in this division. Simon Blay qualifies for this division. He has almost a perfect quarterback reading in his first game. They have, Chris Van Ort is essentially indefensible in this division. Manu Alarroy, like we talked about, a new addition to our media team, is a really good player too. This team is stacked, not super familiar, of course, and Phil Auger, who somehow got 2 games played in this game.
I saw that too. I'm gonna go check what that is.
Yeah, that team is stacked. Again, not familiar to a lot of FPF guys, but they took it to replacements in their first game. Frank Tioli
Can we
Colatrella
also say, I was
unable.
gonna say, replacements didn't play very well in this one. Like, there's a media battle that no one knew about, right?
Yeah, Frank Tioli Colatrella has struggled at times. There are moments where he looks like he's improving. There's that moment for all quarterbacks, though, low division quarterbacks, where it just sort of clicks, where you just the game literally slows down. So he's got some reliable weapons in Denzel Thompson and Matthew Chadwick, Rob DLC. I don't know that he has any like serious speed threats, and that's not going to work against Air Force One. So not entirely on him. It's not a game where he was terrible either. Like 2 interceptions in a game where you're outclassed is not the end of the world. But they just really weren't able to do anything. I'm curious to see how they fare against Save the Turftles this week. It's another young and quick team, so we'll see how that goes. But for Lockdown, Eagle, friend to friend. What is this season like? Make or break for retiree,
In a way, you
your
could say
quarterback?
that. So the general story of our last season was a lack of roster. People kind of
Yeah,
committed, and then either between injuries,
and he
commitments,
couldn't throw. He couldn't throw last
exactly, and
season.
retiree couldn't throw last year, so we had a different quarterback, and that was also part of the struggle. So this year, we've gone with a different approach, which is bring back kind of the core veterans that we can rely on a regular basis, but also add on a few free agents in John Michael and Fonzie, Louis Messier Lavallée, and Reese Morgan Tracy to the squad. So that's going to change the dynamic of the team and, give us a little bit more of that athleticism, that speed, that agility that previous rosters are missing. And also a height factor, too, because we're not exactly the tallest team. So it paid off in our first week. Reese getting a few key sacks, rather, versus Cookers. Louis Messier Lavallée getting a pick 6 in the red zone, bringing that all the way back. And John Michael and Fonzie getting one of the touchdowns in that game. So definitely
Yeah,
showing their colors right away.
just an interesting sort of positioning for Reed because Reed was one of the top Division 5 quarterbacks for a long time, and then was sort of surpassed by like that group of guys around him. I just thought he would make the jump with a lot of other guys, and just it hasn't happened yet. And so he has the physical skill, as you know, Eagle. So it just comes down to whether or not he can adapt his play calling to an evolving FPF. On the other side, Cookers, not a lot of familiar guys on that team.
All
So
brand
maybe
new.
catching them like
A
that.
lot of issues, if I want to call it that, in this game. In that some people showing up with shorts with pockets or zippers, so not being allowed to play. They having to figure out a way to make it work. Their quarterback seems to have not been there, and so it was quarterback by committee. And a lot of times they had a lot of halfback plays or run design plays, like option type of reads. I think they had somewhere about 5 or 6, honestly, might have been more than that, false starts or procedures against the offense for not getting set, like running starts, motion, that type of stuff. And an objectionable conduct against one of their players as well in this one. So it's a little bit more of like a learning experience for their first game in FPF in terms of understanding the rules, understanding the systems, and kind of understanding plays. But they're a decently athletic team. They just got to get a little bit of structure, and they'll be good.
Trailer Park Boys are a team that's been disappointing since their decent start in FPF. I believe they started in the spring season, Division E. It might have been Division 6 in winter. I don't remember, but they were a low division team that I had really high hopes for. Um, they get the win in week 1, but Antoine Meunier struggling to get things going, only completing 8 passes. But it was more than the what could have been, who completed 5 passes. So that's positive.
So the
Um,
way I look at this is that Trailer Park Boys, we've always known them for being a very aggressive man defense, right? They're strong, they're tall, they can play that tight coverage. But that's what saved them in games. It's never been their offense putting up 40 points, right? And
yeah,
NOPs, we always talk about the golden rule of you need to score at least 4 times in a game in order to have a chance in a game realistically. And in today's FPF, you're looking at maybe 6, 7 offensive possessions, if that. So like 2, maybe 3 per half, depending on when you start with the ball, how it's going, etc. So I mean, you have to be pretty efficient. And in this game, Trailer Park Boys got their 4 TDs, but it was still tight. Like their defense didn't do enough in this one to really keep it close. And the pick 6 obviously puts them behind as well. So I don't know if this offense is going to carry them or if they're going to have to go back to their defense all over again.
yeah, it's been their calling card, and it's sort of been the downfall that they can't always seem to score when they need it, despite having a lot of athleticism. And Antoine Meunier, the he's when he doesn't throw off his back foot is a very effective quarterback. Um, on the other side, a name to notice perhaps is Caleb Ferdinand. He played in FPF Junior, and then made the transition to the FPF Major League, or Men's League. He was a really really good junior player, and he scored 8 touchdowns for the one what could have been last season. So I'm curious to see how he continues to develop and adapt in 5B. One other team I want to draw attention to, Eagle. as I continue to load tabs that are taking longer as my computer is getting as tired as I am. Um, is Save a Horse. You thought Save a Horse were like this ridiculously strong Division 3 team. I thought they would fit well and be a dominant Div 5 team, and that's what they looked like in Week 1. They didn't look perfect, but they looked dominant. Kyle Daniel only completing 8 passes, only needing 12 attempts because of his penchant to throw downfield. That is what harmed him down the stretch. In the spring, that continues to be their play style. It's fun. I'll give it that. It is fun. But they get by Team Sexy by a 29-18 score, having to put up 22 in the second half.
Do you think Rob should have let that name go through? Because he's been pretty like adamant about these awkward names and everything, right? Like the little like euphemisms you get away with, but this literally has the term "sexy" in the title. So already there, I'm like, what's going on, Rob?
Yet not the most sexual team name in this game. It
True.
is the second most between the two team names. Rob's been slipping, man. It is what it is. All the team names we wanted to pass through in our younger days that we couldn't. Now it seems to be somewhat of a more open time in FPF. And you know what? We're sex positive on Calling the Audible. So if we can allow Mo to go to a sex party instead of doing his job, that just shows you our open attitude towards sex.
True.
So, those are words. Um, but yeah, for Team Sexy, not a lot of familiar names on this team as well. We're of course gonna get more acquainted as time goes. We recognize, of course, Isaiah Stern, but the rest of the team seems pretty new. So this is perhaps Save a Horse using a little bit of experience and a lot of athleticism to get by in the first week.
You want to start looking into Coed division? This year we
Let's
have a
do
bunch
that.
of teams to go through.
I was disappointed, Eagle. I really enjoyed my experience in Coed in the fall, and because of my cap hit, I couldn't throw in Coed Division 2.
So I was gonna say,
So
Coed Division 2 doesn't have the same rules as Coed 1 because we do have the flex cap this year, which
yeah,
allows people to surpass the quarterback cap at the penalty of your offensive cap being decreased in the process. But Coed 2 doesn't have that, obviously, so you would have had to play Coed 1.
I was adamant too that we couldn't have that rule in Coed 2. And then I had I was one of the ones who paid the consequence of not being allowed to throw in Coed 2. So it was heartbreaking because I really, really, really enjoyed the experience in a way that I didn't know I would, basically. So that said, let's get into it. Two and a Half Kittens make their debut um, in Coed 1. Throwing for them is Hall of Famer Joey Taylor. And Joey Taylor had one of his impressive outings in a tie game. They tied 26-26 to Average and Savage. He didn't turn the ball over. He passed above 70%. It's the Joey Taylor path to success. They just couldn't get it done in the end.
I'm going to bring this up right now because I know the question's going to come up. The website currently shows quarterback cap as violated because he's technically over the official 85, but the current website isn't taking into account the flex cap just yet. So when you take into the flex cap, he's 3 points over, which is a 15-point penalty, which puts him at 473.9, which is 1.1 under. So expect Two and a Half Kittens to continuously show this. As long as the total is under 460, they're good, is really what it comes down to. So just keep that in mind because I know we're going to get emails about it. I just wanted to bring this up immediately.
So this is a joke that's going to make sense to 5 people. Carlo!
Carlo! Pretty
Um,
much.
yeah. But like Alexi Labonte is a guy who's played in this league a long time. He led his team as well. I was hoping to see Rachel Gagnon get on the board. She had 3 targets, but has not yet found that connection with her quarterback. On the other side, Joey Taylor did connect with Shauna Mutosis. I'm going to try with some names. I'm usually better at
I butcher the
name
names usually. You're
pronunciation.
pretty good at this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but normally I have time to prepare per game because Mo sets it up. So now I'm setting up and having to prepare what I'm going to say at the same time, which is different from my normal role on the show. So I do apologize, Sean. I'll get your name right by season's end. If not, feel free to yell at me. All the obscenities are welcome and expected. Gab Wiseman, of course, led this team in receptions targets. Gab is he's FPF royalty at this point, so not surprising to see such a dominant performance in Coed 1. Was there
Am
anything
I
that
the
caught
only
your
one
attention?
surprised in this game though? With a squad of Wiseman, Rupchik, Bertoldi, and Zwern, they only scored 26 points and tie the game.
So I'll tell you what Alexis Dubois told me. In FPF, in co-ed, the strength of your women get you across because you're limited to only being able to play four men, and especially when one of them is your quarterback, you really need to rely on your women, especially the way coverage works in co-ed is the best defenders usually defend the men, sometimes at their peril because if you don't know how good some of these women are, they can absolutely torch you, which I learned in FPF playing co-ed, by the way. But it's something that they'll have to adapt to. That having a loaded roster of guys who've succeeded in the men's division isn't necessarily a path to success. It's one of the keys, but it really will come down to your strength. I love the name Bishop Sycamore being used in FPF. For those who don't know, Bishop Sycamore were a fake team who lost in the high school showcase on ESPN in a game that was borderline unsafe. Tommy Rolly Trojados throwing for them. Took on a much more experienced quarterback in Francois Delorier, who I am Francois Delorier, by the way.
Again,
And
only a certain set of people will get that
yeah,
joke.
9 people will get that joke. Slightly more people will get that joke. But Francois leading his team here, and it's no surprise, right? Party mix have been sort of one of the established one. Captain Pichet catching 2 touchdowns, and
Basically
Alexi
leading that
Gomo.
offense, right, in terms of targets and receptions. Perfect catch completion, so that's good.
Yeah, and Catherine Pichet is going to be doing that a lot, where Alexi Gomo is the big play receiver. Tommy Rodley Trojados needs to develop sort of some timing chemistry, of course, with his team. But you know what? 4 touchdown passes in this game in his first game as a co-ed quarterback. That's pretty impressive.
I mean,
And
the
I
interesting part
attribute
to
that to
me
his knowledge
is
of the game.
there's only a 9-point difference in this particular game, right? So that's a 1 interception and a few extra points. So considering it's his
Yeah.
first game as QB, 1 mistake plus a couple of EPs are really the difference in it against Party Mix. That's pretty impressive to me. I'm pleased for that, and I'm excited for the rest of the games.
Absolutely, and then co-ed 2, the 2 teams we expected to be at the top, Yin and Yang and Kiss My End Zone. The rivalry continues, but they're leading the pack. They're both 1-0 to start the season. Of course, Fit Squad and the Sec tied, but starting with Kiss My End Zone. Kiss My End Zone have had to rebuild their team sort of season in, season out. They add James Drysdale, who's a huge piece. Jonathan Harrod, as we mentioned in the previous podcast, got hurt, so we'll have to see how that goes. But they have, to me, one of the most reliable snappers in the division in Abigail Cockerton. Just great hands, will catch anything as long as you put it on the clock, so to speak. And that's going to be a piece for David DeAndre to use moving forward. This is the kind of game where the stats don't make a ton of sense. He did actually only throw 9 passes. I actually have it on good authority. You know, a game where they didn't have to do much. Went up against Team Commando, and they put up the 3 touchdowns to the air, 1 touchdown on the ground, and that was really all they needed to get by Team Commando. Instead of a slow-paced game, Philip DeKinzio not as effective, which is understandable. Dave DeAndre, of course, having much more experience, and On that side, of course, Edward Gagnon leading the offense with 2 touchdowns. And we'll have to see how this team deploys their women. Ariane Brenko and Florence Testi-Tremblay, they combined for 5 targets, which is great, but 11 yards total. They'll have to find ways to get them in space so that the offense can work at its highest and most efficient, the most efficient way that it can, essentially. Sorry for that word salad, but that's my thoughts on that game.
I know you mentioned it earlier, Pease, but we're talking about La Secte getting a tie this week against a new fit squad. Thoughts on that? Because we know La Secte struggled a little bit in past seasons, especially offensively. I mean, defensively, yes, but it's more if you're not putting up points, then you're turning over the ball, and it results to more points against. Raphaël Beauchamp-Desbois, 50% completion rate, 60 yards, 4 INTs. Basically, his defense getting it done. Alicine Francillon with 2 pick sixes to keep them in this game. Sounds like they haven't really solved their offensive problem yet.
So that's the thing with La Secte is they've struggled at the quarterback position. Alicine Francillon started. We've seen Raphaël Beauchamp-Desbois take snaps as well. They absolutely need the defense, and that's the credit to their knowledge that they've acquired over the past few seasons and improving on the defensive side of the ball. Laurier, to me, has been criminally underused in that offense. So hopefully, Raphael can design better plays that can work. But I think La Secte is going to continue to struggle unless either Raphael develops a playbook that fits his style, or they find a permanent replacement at quarterback. For Fit Squad, there was also 4 interceptions for Frederic Chevrier as well, right? So not a clean game in the slightest at all. They did get a big play from Celestin
And they
Chassier.
scored on offense. That's the big deal here, right?
Yeah. That's that's true. That's a good point. They actually came from behind to tie this game. That to me is an indication for La Secte that things kind of went south. Raphaël Beauchamp-Desbois not being able to put up a point in the second half and letting Fit Squad, a brand new team, come back in the game.
Also, look at who got all 4 of the interceptions. It's Alicine Francillon just carried that defense. All 4 picks to him.
Well, he's very good. He's a very good player. So it's not shocking to see. I know that when I played against La Secte, he's the dude who I had to mark on every play, and literally had to design plays. If I wanted my receivers on that side to get work, I needed to have crossing routes to move him across the field. I had to manipulate him across the field in order to create space, and that's the kind of defender he is. So La Secte, I think, are the kind of team that can rely on their defense from game to game. But I think that, again, the development of an offensive playbook is really what they need to look forward to.
And Pease, another thing that I find interesting in this game, we talked previously about how, Alexis says women make the big difference on these rosters here. Fit Squad with Laurence Paubriand, Roxane Granguet, and Célestine Chartier getting a significant number of targets as compared to the other counterparts and putting up significant yardage as well. So that's always a good sign in terms of being able to use your entire roster across the field.
Absolutely. Let's get to Div 3. I want to make sure we have enough time to cover them as well. Sheesh get off to a hot start. They win 44-13.
I'm sorry, what team?
Sheesh. My mistake. What's funny is my buddy and I have taught my godson to say sheesh like that, and it's his favorite thing to say. It's 2 years now, and we can't get that kid to say barely anything else because he loves to say it. But this team, again, missing D'Andre Borden, but Vincent Benjamin, Noah Groper, Mathieu Lapage, that's a pretty stacked roster. And we saw Craig O'Brien struggle in this one. He threw 6 interceptions. That's not a stat line you see very often. Andrew Langbird, of course, being one of the best defensive play callers in FPF, he leads his side with 2 interceptions against what is going to be, I think, a pretty good team.
So the worry I have for Past Our Prime has never been Craig O'Brien's quarterbacking skill. It's always been the surrounding cast, right? Because it's always been
Mhm.
what I'll call an aging roster, I guess is the nicest way I can say that.
An ancient roster is what you meant to pronounce.
I
You
wanted to
said
say it nicely.
aging. My mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, my mistake. My mistake.
But when you look at this team, right? Sean Kennedy, Tony Lala, Kevin Wyeth as the receiver, GM Calethris, Darnell Kevis Riley. That's not necessarily a bad squad. Patrick Jethon also on this team. So, it's not what you would look at a Craig O'Brien roster and be like, oh, yeah, these are the usual guys and having problems because of the age type of thing. That's not a bad squad. So,
I mean,
I'm
the age is
surprised
still
there's...
there. The age is
Yes,
still an issue.
but it's not an excuse.
No, it just to me when you look across, so Kevin Wyeth is a solid, player, but obviously the greatest FPF quarterback. Sean Kennedy, of course, very good player as well. But how many guys on Pass Prime would you consider sort of Div 2 and up talent at this point in their careers, playing the position they're
Well,
playing?
I would say Sean Kennedy's still up there.
That's him though, right? That's the one guy.
Well,
Whereas
Wyeth,
like
but QB, so doesn't
no, but
really
I'm saying in
count.
their position. Whereas like Mathieu Lepage, Vincent Benjamin, to me, from an athletic standpoint, are there. Jacob Boydman again underused, but very good player as well. Just athletically, I don't think they really stood much of a chance. But that's been past our prime's calling card their entire time in FPF. Famously, Mo keeps drawing my attention. Kept drawing my attention, saying I hate them. I don't. They're actually a group of great guys, but that roster's always been infuriating because I remember they used to take our very young roster and bend them over their knees. But I think that the Passer Prime moniker might be actually coming true at this point. Do you think I'm off base here?
No, I can totally see it. I'm also curious to see, is this Craig making bad decisions or is this balls going off receivers' hands? Because sometimes you never know.
Yeah, we should have asked GM about that. But of course, with all the things happening in FPF this week, we didn't get the details. I'm curious to see how they shake out for the rest of the season. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see, of course. Bearskins beat Lightweight.
I was
Lightweight
actually
going.
just going to ask about that game because this is the return of a couple franchises that we haven't seen in a little bit of time to questionable results. Doug
So
McKernan being quarterback for Lightweight.
yeah, Simon Dagenet has tendonitis in his throwing elbow, so
Yeah, but
he's
he's
going to
had
be
that for
out
10
a week or
years.
two.
So,
Yeah, but apparently it's bad now. So he was unable to play this game. So Doug McKernan quarterback. Doug McKernan is a very different kind of quarterback. He's a one read, and if it's not there, he'll scramble and buy time. And that's not the strength of this team. Eddie Lee, Justin Blanchard, Francois Hogue are all guys who have their defined roles, and Simon is really good at maximizing what those guys do. Doug McKernan has more of a sandbox sort of backyard football kind of vibe, and it works when he has the right pieces around him. I don't know that these are the right pieces for that kind of offense. On the other side, Bearskins continue to do what they do, win unspectacularly, right? That's been their calling card forever. Neil Edson, who has now, of course, been a championship quarterback, teamed with guys like Vinny Galano, Sean Avram, Jordan Allard, brings in the little bit of youth. And, of course, Marco Bertoldi. Still leading that offense. No matter what names they add, he always seems to be the guy that the offense runs through, and this game was no exception.
I know we talked about it earlier, but you think Incredibles might steal a couple guys off this squad and try and ramp up their core?
I think they might need to. I think they might need to. But we'll see, of course. We'll see them when they get all of their pieces. Whereas, unlike the Incredibles, Bearskins had all of their pieces here in this game. So that's the difference in FPF. It's hard to win. Rosters are not that big, right? So if you don't have all of your players, it's hard to get a win.
A team I
I go,
want to talk about. I don't
go for
really
it.
want to talk about it, but I feel like we should address the elephant in the room, or more specifically, the Oompa Loompas in the room, who take a shellacking against EZW 55-6. Now, And of course, there could be a variety of reasons for this, but I look at the Oompa Loompas roster, and they're all brand new players with base Division 3 ratings.
Hmm.
So, is this, hey, I want to register, and there's only a spot available in Division 3? Or is this, hey, I want to register, and we're good, and even though we tell you not to, you do it anyways? Or is
Well,
this
so
some other reason that we haven't come up with?
why are you asking me this question? You're the guy I would ask this question of.
Because I'm not involved in the paperwork of it. But I would imagine it's
Okay.
probably one of those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to play in Division 3 unless you've played before, man. There's some really good teams. There's some really good teams. So, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about this game because it's literally their first game in FPF playing
Against
against
ECW. Yeah.
EDW, who just played in Tier 1 in the fall. And they might, like, this team is so new, they don't even know what Tier 1 is. In the fall, we don't have divisions, we have tiers. So, yeah, they were in the top tier and were competitive to a degree, basically playing Division 1 and 2 competition. Now coming down, and, Jeremy White, I'm sure that the game has slowed down for him at this point after playing that level of competition.
I mean, just
But I
this,
want that.
they scored 8 touchdowns, so 7 on offense, 1 on defense, and they had 7 of 8 extra points completed too. So yeah, the ECW firing on all cylinders in this one.
So for this division, we talk about ECW. We expect them to be at the top of the division. Who are the teams you expect to be at the top? And is there anyone who will climb despite a rough start?
So I'm gonna do this by mini conference here. So in Conference A East, I would imagine Bearskins are probably gonna hold out. Les Malud are back, which is interesting. So their
Yeah.
roster has been a little bit different every year, depending on who's gonna be quarterbacking again. It could change the outcome of the roster. Right now, it's Anthony Beauchamp-Freza who's taking over, and Dragan Mallet is back, and Guillaume Saint-Amand didn't
Well,
play the
Beauchamp
first
Fernandez
week.
has been the quarterback for a while. Like they haven't played in a while, but when they were like the team that was always returning to Division 3, one of those like teams that are parked in the division, they've been competitive with him as quarterback. So I expect them not necessarily to be one of the top tier teams, but definitely competitive week in, week out.
Yeah, and LGC, I don't know if they're gonna hold up in this particular division. I mean, of
I think
those
it'll be
four
tough.
teams, I think Bearskins and Maluda are gonna be the ones that hold it. In the West, I think Sheesh takes this. Blessed might give them a run for their money, but
No,
I'm putting
it's
my
got to
money
be
on
blessed.
Sheesh. Yeah.
It's got to be blessed.
No, I don't think
Blessed,
so. You really?
blessed. They have the. Well, let me open the roster first before I make. Yeah. So
It's
it's the
one of the
best
two. I
quarterback.
don't think I
It's
think
the best
Oompa Loompas
quarterback
is
in the
not gonna do
division.
well.
It's the best quarterback in the division. Jafar Hassan is an excellent defender who a lot of people don't know about yet. Same with David Gutkowski, Marvin Steinberg, Will Power, Kevin Smuda, and they have probably the best rusher in the division in Terry Babelis.
I don't know.
To me,
If you put Sheesh versus Blessed, and there will be a game that's gonna happen, I'm gonna peek on it. What week that's gonna be in? It's gonna be week 5. They're gonna be in their prime at that point. That's gonna be an interesting game
that's
for
got
me
to be
to
game
see
of the
what's gonna
week.
happen.
That's got to be game of the week. I don't even care what the rest of the slate is. That's got to be game of the week.
In Conference B, I think ECW takes it pretty
Yeah,
easily.
handily.
Don't see anyone else taking that one. And then in the South, I don't know how to read this one. So Expendables is interesting to me. They haven't played a game yet. They play next week. It's another one of those situations of like a past our prime roster where it's a mix of new and old. A lot of good talent and athleticism. A lot of upper division
Mhm.
players all together. It's just the mix and how that's going to work. Obviously, a lot of minds on the field, but who's actually going to be at pivot is going to be interesting. So I think they have a chance, but obviously we haven't seen the results just yet. Other than that, if Pastor Prime gets their act together, that could be an option. Killer Bees have been hit or miss in past seasons, so that
Well,
could be good or
Killer
bad.
Bees, Killer Bees are coming down from Div 2.
Yeah,
So we don't actually know how they fit in this division. They did score 40 points in the first week. That's a good sign.
yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen on that one over there. Killer Bees played Speed
Speed
Academy, too,
Academy.
by the way. Yeah. So I don't know. That's the one that's the hardest one to judge. I think the other ones there's like clear favorite or favorites, but I think the South, the fact that it's 5 teams is interesting too because there's more teams to grab it. But that's my
Yeah.
general thoughts on them. I don't know if there's any other teams you see that might be different.
Well, so my thoughts on Division 3 are that it's very top heavy. I don't think. I think it's going to come down to Sheesh Blessed, EZW, and that's it. There's a top three, and then there's everybody else. It's kind of what we saw. Was it in the fall where
Yes?
like
Question mark? Like finish the thought.
I know I think it's actually in spring. I don't remember. Where basically Sheesh and Bless sort of led to like they were team like 1 and 1A basically. And I think we're going to see that again. Bearskins I see being slightly not as good. Maybe lightweight when Simon returns because we've made fun of Simon for a long time, but in Division 3, he's a guy who's played quarterback in Division 2 and scored a lot of points. So, we'll have to see how that goes. But to me, there's a top three, and then there's everyone else.
I can see it. I mean, Division 3 is that kind of like, I'll call it make or break division in a lot of ways, where either you're going to make the jump into Div 2 where you would say the competition gets even higher, or you kind of, linger in 3, maybe dabble in 4 and everything. I would say it's probably, as much as we like to say Div 1 is the pinnacle of competition, I think Div 3 is that nice mix of, a lot of teams on the cusp ready to make that next jump, but just not there just yet. So it's always the most interesting one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like those are the teams that we're sort of outlining, right? Like teams that we think, man, if things break their way, they might be a Division 2 team in Division 3. You know what I mean? So
pretty much, yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. And like in the case of Stephen Harper, he's already throwing in Division 2, right? Like so definitely not a stretch to believe that they can do that. He can do that at this level as well. We're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we'll do Division 4 women's, and we'll get to the mailbag.
And we're back.
Very, very professional, especially to those who don't listen to all the hours. We are back. We are in hour 3. It's actually hour 4 for Eagle and I. It's been a long, long, long night. But yeah, so welcome to everyone joining us. You are listening to and perhaps watching on the Audible. For those of you who have stuck through for all 3 hours, thank you for your patronage. We really do enjoy it. This week is going to be sans a lot of the shenanigans that we normally do, although Division 4 will have more shenanigans than usual. I have a game that I haven't even told Eagle about, and I'm going to introduce it, and we're going to play it on this episode. Oh no, we're doing it. I had Iggy do some work for me in Denver, so he was kind enough to put that all together for me. It's really stupid, don't worry, which is okay because we've been missing some stupidity because I have to lead the show, which means I can't goof off as much, which is less enjoyable for me because Mo Khan is away. He's taking a course in taxidermy. So if you want to learn how to drive taxis or stuff things into dead things, Mo's going to be your guy.
I don't even know what to say on this.
Yeah. I mean, it's better than the orgy.
Is it though?
It's creepier than the orgy. So there's that.
Is it though?
Yes, it is. It's definitely creepier than the orgy.
I was going to say, this got really dark as the episodes went on, right? First he's like eating cats or something, and that one's totally fine.
Well, see, like, isn't that the darkest one? I feel like we got lighter through time. So maybe the taxidermy.
I mean, if you combine the first one and the second one, is he really eating cats?
Well, I was going to say the first and the third one, the taxidermy is for the leftover cats, the ones he couldn't finish. So maybe it's a way to preserve them for future consumption, like a refrigerator.
I really hope this isn't someone's first episode.
Every episode is someone's first episode, right? So here, what we're doing is we're doing division. We're doing Division 4. We're doing the women's division, and then we're going to get to the FPF mailbag where we'll answer some questions and talk about some of the things that are on the community's mind. So for those of you stuck through, that's where you get your reward because we actually get you involved in the show. But also, please continue to reach out to us. We're pretty easy to find, so contact us on whatever platform you prefer. Remember that week 2 is picture week, so try not to look like an asshole. That is all the administrative work there is for that. We'll get to Division 4. We'll start with that. Eagle, you want 4A or 4B to start?
Well, just a description. There are 4 registered into one spot, but then we divided it into 2 separate breakdowns, so 4A and 4B. Let's do the reverse. Let's do 4B 4B first, actually, since we did all the other A's at the beginning. So let's start with 4B on this one over here. Just quickly, when we go through the breakdown of it, like usual, we're going to have ourselves 2 conferences with 2 subdivisions each in each one of them. Do you want to just start off by just looking at breakdowns and see any outliers or teams you think shouldn't be here?
Well, I was surprised at first to see Golden Eagles in 4B, but sort of intelligently built team. They have some young talent that doesn't have a ton of experience and a bunch of old guys. So despite that, they take a loss in the first game. The Vultures, who are a team who are improved rapidly since their start in Division Six. Ben McMahon led them to a win over Kevin Lubin's Golden Eagles. Golden Eagles were one of the first FPF dynasties in Division Five. One of those ill-fated dynasties, Eagle, who went 10-0, only to lose the championship, or just to lose in the playoffs. Sorry, first round in the playoffs, like many of those dynasties. Alex David from Golden Eagles has the distinction of being on 2 of those teams. So it's a team we've been familiar with, a team we has expected success for years and years and years, finally coming back together, although a little bit different from what we've expected. But the familiar names, of course, being guys like Donald Jacques, Alex David, Stephen St. Fleur returns as well. So it's cool to see a lot of familiar names, as well as them adding like a guy like I just saw it, Alex LaRoche, right? Like a lot of FPF experience along with some younger players, as we said. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Vultures, the normal guys you expect: James Drysdale, Anthony Drysdale, Philip Roberts, Gary McMahon, guys who we recognize as being part of that roster, and of course the impossibility of containing Ben McMahon, right?
Yeah, I think that's the one that people really struggle with. What I've noticed about the Vultures is their playbook isn't very developed. As in,
No,
we always talk about there's 3 to 5 plays that teams like to run. That might be their entire playbook, honestly. But McMahon can transform those plays on the run, right? Just by creating space, rolling windows for his own receivers to hit. Yeah.
Traditionally, it's not only 3 to 5 plays; it's 3 receivers. He just doesn't use the outside receivers as much as he should. And to me, that's the thing about this that I find shocking, is that Kevin Lubin is a very good defensive play caller. So I'm surprised that they didn't adapt on the fly as much as I thought they could have. Yeah, they take a loss in their first week. What did you see that caught your eye?
I want to bring something up to everyone's attention, which is Sphinx. They are returning. They've usually played in Division 4 and 5, so right now they're in 4B. They had a tie against Los Locos in Week 1. The reason why I'm bringing up this game is that Sphinx is going to forfeit this game because they are 12 points over the cap. So we've recently communicated with the teams to let them know that they're going to be forfeiting. Remember, you got to be under your cap numbers for the division in order to qualify. So instead of a 25-25 tie, this is going to be a 30-0 win for Los Locos. So don't be the Sphinx.
Only the most obvious thing. And also, here, if I'm the Sphinx, I go to bed really upset because not only did you violate the cap by 12 points, but you also didn't win the game.
Yeah, that's the really sad part about it.
And you face Los Locos, who, they're a team that's developing, right? So Etienne Cloutier is a very experienced quarterback. We talked about former Division 5 sort of teams that ran the table. Sphinx were they the first 10-0 team to lose first round of the playoffs? Oh no, that was the family.
Yeah, I think it was the I don't remember how that was. I think the family was the one to lose. That's a long time ago, though. We're talking like
I know
winter 2010, something like that.
But it was like this whole. At one point, Division 5 had a team every season that would go 10-0 and lose in the playoffs.
Yeah, literally that.
And Sphinx was one. If they're not the first, they're amongst the first. And so they're a good team. They bring Jean-Christophe Binet, but I don't know who they'll be able to keep. 12 points over the cap is massive.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the problem is Division 4A has a cap of 445 and Division 4B has a cap of 430. Because they're in Division B, it's because their roster was eligible for it because we drew the line and let them be here, which means you can't go over the cap. So don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I was surprised the Bruins lost in week one. We talked before about Gab Wiseman. This is the team he's actually able to throw for. This is a team we saw be successful in spring um, in the fall season. They returned Zach Swern. Zach Swern only getting 2 targets, making a single catch. Robert Cristiano doing the damage for them. But I saw part of this game. They didn't look good against Mongoose.
I was
They
going to say
didn't look good
Mongo's
against
coming back
Mongoose.
as well. Alexandre Godet being here and bringing back his usual receivers. Jonathan Chevalier is here. Cedric Knuckles back and adding Francois Delaurier to this squad. Mongoose were always good, right? And so this iteration is also good.
You don't need to tell me, Eagle. My first championship game was a game I lost to Mongoose with
Correct.
a team that I thought was overwhelming, and they just always find a way. They are the epitome of a team that sort of like plays as a team, wins as a team kind of thing. But of course, with Jonathan Chevalier, with Francois Delorier, Cedric Knuckle was one of these like low division stars for a long time. So it's cool to see them return. I didn't think that they'd be able to go toe to toe with Bruins on week one and be able to dominate the way they did.
So
And
here's a question for you, and I think did Pease just hang up on me? I think Pease just hung up on me. Let's try this again. This is fun. This is fun. Hey, Pease.
hi,
Did you hit hang up?
no, it's worse. I have so many tabs open. I hit back while I was on the Skype page. Week one. It's week one for everyone. Week one for everyone, folks.
All right. What I was just saying before is here's a question for you, and I think this is gonna make sense when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Bruins, were they a big fish in a small pond when they were playing in other divisions, and now they finally met their match?
I think that I wouldn't say that per se because the top end of their team is very talented. Rocco Cristiano and Mathieu Wimer are absolute burners. Zach Swern's a top division talent. They add Jocelyn Calix, who's very good. Gab Wiseman is one of the smarter quarterbacks in FPF. My concern with Bruins always has been the inflexibility of their defense. They do one thing, they do it pretty well, but if you know what they're doing, it's fairly easy to pick apart and you can create the mismatches. So until that changes, they're going to be susceptible to these kinds of games. Unfortunately, when they put, especially against a guy like Alex Godet, right? Like Alex Godet you have to force him to make mistakes. He's not going to give it to you.
Yeah, no, exactly that. You're going to have to force them out, and clearly not in this game. I mean, 19 for 28, 6 touchdowns, more than 200 yards. And again, I always look at the defensive stats to see those 9 incompletions. What were they? I see no PDs, and that worries me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because if you're even a moderately experienced quarterback in FPF, you know what they're doing from the first snap, and then they don't do anything else. That's all I can say without giving it away. We've talked about it on the show before as well.
We have, yeah.
You don't want to give away all the goods week one. You know what I mean? And the thing is, the way Bruins have approached it is like, this is just who we are. This is our identity. This is the way we're going to win games. This is the way we're going to lose games, right? But as you move up through the divisions, that's harder to do, right?
Exactly. No, I completely agree.
Let's go to 4A.
4A, do you think is balanced, or do you think there's like a clear standout of all the teams that are in it?
Well,
because I look at this, and it's not obvious to me, like who's the strong teams and who's the weak teams. It's very mixed, is the way I look at it.
There's top season. I'm glad to see them actually pushing themselves because I've always felt that they've played in divisions under their ability. and they get a win. They're rewarded with a win in the first week. Sean McGrath at quarterback there, and maybe Small Giants Blackouts are a team we saw have a lot of success in the spring. Um, those are the two, I think. I have a game I'd like to play with you
Mm-hmm.
because these teams, I believe, are all in 4A. So I listened to a podcast where they talk about movies that are rated under 40% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a podcast called Cinephobe, where the host then needs to decide whether they phobe or file the movie. Phobe being that it is accurately rated, and to file means they've ascertained that the movie is actually a good movie, just rated poorly. So I kind of like this concept because we always talk about overrated, underrated in sports, but that's always code for I like them or don't like them. So what I had instead was I had Iggy rate these teams. Like if you had to rate teams as being under 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, give me some teams that would fit
And just to
that
be
criteria.
fair, are we comparing this to finishing the season like 4-6, like 40% win rate on their
No,
10
no,
games, or
they
just?
are rated by the experts as being under 40%.
But we are the experts.
No, Iggy is the single
Iggy is the
expert.
expert. Okay, okay. So how do you want to do this?
So I'm going to list the teams, and then we're going to give our opinion whether or not this team's an absolute banger, like Weekend at Bernie's 2, like Horrible Bosses 2, or are they more like Hurricane Heist? Will we phobe or file them? So again, phobe meaning they absolutely deserve to be under 40%. File meaning absolute banger. This Iggy's completely wrong. He has no taste.
Okay, okay. I think I can work with you on this.
All right. It's basically overrated, underrated. I
Yeah,
just
yeah, I
had to
get it.
find a code for it, basically. So the first team we're starting with is, and this is just flames from Iggy to start with. He's he listed the Brotherhood.
Yep.
So let's open up that tab.
Let's
My
open this
internet
up.
again slowing down as the night's moving.
So this is a similar but different variation of the Brotherhood roster. A lot of same names, but Jeremy Ronson taking over as quarterback, which is probably the biggest difference on this entire squad.
Yeah, and it's
I
obviously not having Theo J at quarterback, right? Like that's
Yep.
this team couldn't fit the cap with him. They've always been really good at managing their cap, and this is the latest evolution of that.
I I'm worried for this team, so I'm going to phobe this one because of the quarterback issues.
So that is the concern. I would say in the past, Jeremy Ronson has been a nice piece, but not sort of like the top end talent that we've seen from them before. We obviously recognize Saad and Ahmed Majid, who are two of the best recruiters in FPF. So I look at a guy like Nathan Leandro, who I'm not familiar with. I look at Rahman Khan, who I'm not familiar with. I'm like, maybe these are the guys. These are the guys who could turn the corner. I'm interested. I think Jeremy Ronson's played in the league long enough. And look, he only had 11 attempts. Nathan Leandro was worse at quarterback, throwing 3 interceptions. So I'm curious. To me, I don't know if this is a good movie, but it's an entertaining movie. It's definitely
True.
Weekend at Bernie's 2. File it. Give me file for the Brotherhood. The
All right,
next
what's the next
team.
one?
The next team, Spiros Cougars.
So,
Of course, first of all, it's going to be hard for me. I'm going to say this off the bat. I'm too emotional about this. It's going to be hard for me to phobe Spiros Cougars because they're named after Junior Spera, who passed away last year, unfortunately, losing his battle to cancer, and basically is an FPF hero. Just there isn't a person on earth who didn't like Junior Spera, and his team now being named in his honor
so I'm going to file this one. A
because of
little
all
bit
the
of
things I
a
just said.
No, not actually not because of that. So in this first game against Centaur, they had Arminio Yadaluka come in as their quarterback, and within the first few plays, immediately tore his ACL. So
Oh,
best of
that's awesome.
recovery to him. It definitely sucks, and it's going to be a long road back. Now, I don't know if it's been confirmed because I know he's going through the tests and everything, but definitely a knee injury significant enough to not be able to walk type of thing immediately after it happens. Like, gets all puffy and everything. So already your game plan is completely thrown out the window in this first game. So I kind of write that one off. Vince Pisano taking over as QB, most likely in this one over here. And then we talked earlier about Santino and Dante Sparagna that are
Right,
going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
decent. You have Alessandro Barristoni on the squad, Nicholas Grappini, classic names. Anthony Sigia's on this team. I'm definitely filing this as something I'm going to keep watching for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and guys like John Giamarella, who's been on this team for a long time, Mario Rinaldi, guys who are not sort of like FPS stalwarts, but just are familiar within the system. They might not, them on the other hand, I don't know if they're as entertaining, but I think the team is going to be solid throughout the season. Again, if Firmino Yadaluka returns, easy file, right? Like he's FPS first superstar. We joke around that in the black and white highlight reels, Firmino Yadaluka was sort of that guy. They also know enough football players that I think that he can be replaced. But Vince Pisano, in and on his own, is a Division Four quarterback. I've played head to head with him in back when we were in Division Six and Division Five. It's nonsensical to me that he wouldn't be a Division Four quarterback. So even without Erminio, I think they're in good hands. Obviously, ideally, if Firmino is back, that's huge. I would even venture to say that they might even be better off with Firmino as a receiver, just because of how good he is as a receiver. But obviously, with the knee issue,
Vince
we'll have to
prefers
see.
playing receiver, funny enough. So he's explaining it's the other way
Really?
around that he would like it, but who knows?
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. The next team on the docket. We'll have to ascertain whether Les Bleus Branleurs are going to be above or under 40% on Rotten
This
Tomatoes.
team has mystified me for years,
Yeah.
years. I this is what's a good example of this? This is like the Matrix 3 where
Okay.
you like every version you've seen previously has been excellent, but there's been moments where you're like, this doesn't make any sense, I don't like this anymore. And so now we're kind of getting to like the Resurrections, the reboot, whatever the new one was called, and you're like, okay, like I've seen this before, it's all the same. It's the classic what we see for rosters. Minton Tat is on the squad, Olivier Lebert is on the squad, Simon Turel is on the squad, Phil Angers misses a game on the squad. I don't know what to do. So I'm going to phobe this only just because it's been done and not successful.
So, there are movies like what can I think of? Troll 2. Pretty bad movie
Troll
overall.
2.
Nothing redeemable. Yeah, the
That's the one with the
fan.
bug on the guy's face and they're going to eat
Mhm.
me and yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, Cats. Bad movie. Deuce Bigelow, European Gigolo. These are all movies that are rated under 40% that deserve that rating, in my opinion. But every once in a while, you get a movie that every time you watch it, you're not sure how you feel. Last Action Hero is that for me. Where I didn't think much of it when it came out, and then I liked it, and then sort of went through a period where I didn't like it, and then I rewatched it recently. I'm like, you know what? In this time, this movie actually fits better. Um, I played with Minton Tat in the past, and he didn't play in this first week. So we see Olivier Piloto play quarterback. I don't know what the makeup of the roster is going to be, so I'm going to phobe them because of the roster inconsistency. Because when I turn on Last Action Hero, I want to see Arnold. You
Yeah.
know, when I
Yeah,
see
I agree.
I want to see Mental Tat throwing to Olivier Piloto, and I want to see Piloto at quarterback. So yeah, I'm gonna phobe them. Gonna phobe them. The last one we got, Big Fun.
Big fun. I haven't looked at this roster, so this is going to be interesting for me.
It's also impossible for us to know all of the rosters in FPF in every
Also true.
division week one, right? So they lost 41-8 week one. Um, And Big Fun features guys like Brandon Taylor, Doug McKernan, Evan Eli Nolet, guys who are fairly familiar.
They
Zachary
also
Albert-Gill.
they also lost to blackouts, and
Yeah.
I mean, out of all teams, like for example, Adam Sinagra in this game was 9 for 14 with 5 interceptions. So whoever's covering the deep ball is clearly making mistakes, right? I mean,
Well,
you don't do
we've
that by
talked.
driving the field nicely.
We've also talked about Adam Sinagra and the dubiousness of him throwing in Division Four.
Yeah. So
Right?
I
At least
think
it's 4A.
So I think the problem this team is going to have is an issue in systems. You have Evan Eli Nole, who's quarterbacking because Doug McKernan is over the cap in order to be eligible for Division 4 to throw. But I don't trust Evan's system and play calling more than I trust Doug's system. So I think the huddles are going to be very busy, which means that your receivers aren't going to get the ball. So as much as you have Zachary Alberts-Gill, Andrew Ledoux, Brandon Taylor, obviously Mike Francese is excellent, I just don't see them being fed, and so I'm worried that this is going to be a long season. So I'm going to go with Phobe on this, but I'm kind of hoping that they maybe get a turnaround midway and kind of get things together and maybe have like, a second half or a reboot that actually makes it a little bit better.
That's not bad. I'm trying to think of that movie. There was like everyone in it. It was an action. Why can't I think of it? My God, I'm
Is it
tired
The
today.
Expendables?
It's not The Expendables. It's similar. Um, who's that dude from who played the agent in? Why can't I think of the show? Oh my God, Jeremy Piven. Jeremy Piven was in it. It's an action movie. Look that up while I'm talking about this cast. Um,
This is going to be hard to find, but okay, let's try here. It was definitely a
he
movie.
yeah, it was a movie. Jeremy
You're not talking
Piven
about
action
Entourage,
movie.
are you?
No. He was in that, but his first Smoking Aces. Literally, I typed in Jeremy Piven action movie. It took me 8 seconds, Eagle.
Smoking
Um,
Aces, yeah, okay, yeah.
Smoking it. So I'll read you this
Ryan
cast.
Reynolds,
while
Ben
you,
Affleck, Jason Bateman, Common, Andy Garcia, Alicia Keys, Ray Liotta, Chris Pine, Matthew Fox. Yeah, that's a good
banger
cast.
of a cast, right? So you have
Yeah.
Rico Tolino, Zachary Alberts-Gill, Doug McKernan, Mike Francese, Andrew Ledoux, Brandon Taylor, Kenny Boutelier. This team should be awesome, right? But I'm kind of with you. Much like Smoking Aces kind of just missed the mark. I think this is just off a beat. Evan Eli Nolet hasn't thrown in a while. His system, I think, is simplistic for this division. He's going to struggle to build his pieces. I don't know if Doug McKernan can coach him up because they're so different in style. So I'm gonna see how that develops. The one thing they have working for them is much like that cast. It seems to be a group of buds who really get along. It seems to be a group of people who have played together in the past. So I'm hoping if they turn it around. But my worry is that when we get to the end credits, when we get to the end of the runtime, we're gonna be left dissatisfied. I'm gonna phobe it. I'm sorry. You guys just seem like smoking aces. That's just as simple as it gets. And that is our coverage for Division 4A.
Do you have any other movies? Because I have one in mind that might segue us into our next topic.
A League
Actually
of Their Own.
rated 69% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Nice.
Ocean's 8, which brings us to the women's division.
Wait, how was that movie over 40%? It was atrocious.
I honestly, I Googled it because I thought it was going to be
Julia
under, and that
Roberts?
number surprised me.
Julia Roberts plays a character and also herself. So in this universe, she's acknowledging that she looks like herself.
Stavanenda Julia Roberts. Yeah.
It's so nonsensical. I was thinking actually a good movie featuring women. It's
Ghostbusters.
on. No, unfortunately not. It's a 1992 sport comedy called A League of Their Own, featuring Gina Davis and Madonna. It's on Prime Video. I don't know why I'm doing an ad read for Amazon. They're not a sponsor. I'm exhausted.
It's
But
been a long day.
let's get to the women's division.
So,
I'm
quick
so
things off
excited
the
about
bat
this.
here. There's okay, they've already been removed. Actually, no, we're good. Never mind. We have
Cool.
11 teams in the women's
Yeah.
division.
I'm
First off, can we just talk
I'm so
about how
happy.
impressive that is? Yeah, me too. I'm happy.
That's awesome. It's as good as it gets. I I was happy we were getting a co-ed division when we did, and I was worried at times when it was struggling, and that's sort of solidifying itself so much that we've got two. The women's division uh, coming up, and essentially being this strong so early on is absolutely impressive.
So I
Um,
I actually have beef to the schedule maker for this schedule that they put out because there are
okay.
crossover games obviously between them. And in week 1, you have all 5 of the tier 1 teams play all of the tier 2 teams.
Yeah,
Why
I
would
noticed
you
that too.
do that? Why would you do that? Like
Get
literally
out of the way.
go no, think about it. If that's your first game in Flag Plus and you're playing against the Concordia women's team, do you think you have any chance in that game? Do you really think you have any chance when you're like, "Oh,
How
we're going
are
to go
how
play the football?"
why aren't why aren't they ranked
Because
first?
they
Oh,
have
because they
the
don't.
least plus minus. Imagine.
No, but no, because they
I don't
it's
know.
points against the first tiebreak, right? So they should be tied at first or
I don't know. It's a weird rant. No, it's because it's their divisional for some reason is marked as 0. I don't know. There's a bug. We got to fix the bug.
okay.
But just look at these
So
scores. Like this should not have been a week 1 schedule.
I
Granted, this should
asked
have been week 7, admittedly. So fine, but
I asked Alexis Dubois, who's writing for this division, what he thought if he had any storylines. And the first storyline he said was lack of parity. And I don't think it's lack of parity so much as just, Division One is much stronger than Division Two, right? Like,
mm,
or Tier One stronger than Tier Two. Um, and we saw that four of the five teams allowed less than 14 points,
mm.
right? So you can't expect a lot of wins. That said, like, don't you think it's better in some ways to get that loss out of the way, that scheduled loss?
I
It kind
I
of feels like college
guess.
football in that way, right?
I mean, I
Like
guess
the early
so.
losses hurt less.
I look at it as if you're and we've all been in the situation, right? Everyone has their first FPF game. So if you've registered for a division to play as a women team against other women's teams, and your first game is against an opponent of which they know what they're doing, and you kind of don't, or maybe not at the same level. I just feel that's a little bit like not the best first impression, obviously. Yes, it has to happen, but it would have been better if there was interdivisional play in Tier 2 and interdivisional play in Tier 1. Like I said, because we technically started Week 7, it was probably planned for in Week 1 to have that happen, and now we're just at that point in the season. So it's a little unfortunate that that's the first experience. I guess the overall message is this should not happen in the future, and hopefully your games are more fair. That's kind of the whole way I'm looking at
Yeah.
it.
The Concordia women, of course, led by my favorite FPF quarterback in Sarah Parker, coming off that championship win, I believe in Tampa, Florida. Um, so, like, you have a literal international champion quarterbacking the team. Sana Ali scoring 3 touchdowns, basically unguardable in this game. Chelsea Morgan, Carolyn Mokin-Joubert. It's a who's who of women's flag football. On the other side, Red Nation couldn't get anything going. I'll give a shout out in a sense to Allison Sobol. I know the 5 interceptions are ugly for sure. That said, Allison moved the ball. Like, she completed 14 passes. We spent 3 hours talking about men's divisions where guys were completing single, not even double digit pass attempts, right? So, like, we see guys completing 7 passes, 8 passes, and so on. Allison's moving the ball, right? And
Yep.
Jasmine Bethlemy, of course, being the most heavily targeted, along with Geraldine Cabilo Abante. I promise your names will get more familiar, and I will, of course, not have to lead the show. And Lamise Aljundi finds herself on this team as well. So I know there's knowledge on this team. They're just outclassed. I expect Red Nation to be more competitive in future weeks. They have a game this week against the Rock. I think this will be a more competitive game, although the Rock are at least a team that's more experienced in FPF. So we'll have
Also,
to
can
see
I
how
just
that shakes out.
appreciate the fact that there were a significant number of plays in this game? Because normally you see a score this high, this heavy, and you think it as like 20, 30 plays that happened in the game, and it's just like a very like laborious game, but
Mhm.
this is a fast paced game. If you're getting like over almost 60 plays in a game, right?
I think that's what happened. Like so, like just Sarah Parker's efficiency on offense keeps that offense going, and then there's the pressure to. We've talked about it before. Like you've seen me, for example, run Noah Huddle, and then the other team for some reason decides to run really fast pace, just because of the pressure of like, oh, look how fast this other team is moving, and Sarah Parker's as efficient a passer as there is in all of FPF.
Yep, agreed.
So that doesn't necessarily surprise me. Brutes took it to strangers, and Brutes and Concordia will face each other in week 2. But I want to draw attention because this isn't sort of FPF royalty the same way Sarah Parker is, right? Like Maud Lacasse is not as well known. She goes for over 200 yards, 3 incompletions all game. Annabelle Chiffre putting up a couple scores, catching every target. Laurence Pombriand, of course, we know her a little bit here. She's got 3 touchdowns in this game. Just total domination start to finish. 54 points. Doesn't matter who you're playing. That's impressive.
Yeah, I agree. In comparison to the other game, this game only had 41 plays, right? Or like maybe a little bit of running and everything, and very little yards. And like you mentioned, Pease, the completions to incompletions ratio for Morgan Cosimon, I can't read that right, Valois. That's
Cosimano
obviously
Valois.
Cosimano
How did you
Valois.
get the Italian sounding name
It's
wrong?
because it's too small. I can't. It's blurred for me.
Okay.
So the that's obviously intimidating. But again, Brutes are probably going to be one of the stronger teams in the tier 1 grouping. So you can kind of see why that happens.
Yeah, I think brutes have strangers have some stuff to build on, and Sandrine Deschênes Lessard being the favorite target. Of course, she scored the only touchdown, and on defense, Celia Lamar getting a sack, getting a PD. To me, that's huge. But on the other side, to me, just the three-headed monster of Annabelle Chevrier, Laurence Pampriand, and Alexis Gal- sorry, Galrenault. French names are my kryptonite, by the way. I have a hard time with them. But again, trying to get them right by the season's end. But then on defense, dude, 6 interceptions. And Maud Lacasse helping out her own cause with a pick six, being 2 interceptions. As a quarterback, though, do you want to get the pick six, or do you want to pad your passing stats? So
Uh,
team first move there by Maud Lacasse, scoring on the pick six.
I mean, I was gonna say normally if it's a tight game, I think you want the. I think you don't want the pick six. I just want the intercept. That obviously depends on what moment in the game it is. If it's a blowout, who cares at that point, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it depends on whether you want to control the pacing of the game and just INT and try and get a stop on defense, or whether you really want to just get the ball back and try and counter it. I would say you're probably better off just the INT by itself, but I mean, it depends on the game situation.
What's interesting too is she hit Pompriand for a 10-yard touchdown on the first drive. On the other side, Deschênes Lessard scored a 45-yard touchdown on the first completion of the game for strangers, and then like nothing else. That's a rough game to play. Meanwhile, Pompriand basically capping off this just methodical drive. And I think that's what we're going to see from Maud Lacasse is, maybe not the most high flying offense, but an offense that's going to put up yards just by virtue of constantly being on the move, right? Like, it's the kind of offense, it's not always looking to take the big strike, but it's going to take what's there and then capitalize when you make a mistake. And that's what we saw from Brutes in the first week.
So that actually brings us to a conversation we're going to have regarding next week's schedule. So we mentioned it earlier on in the show. Chris Rive is our Game of the Week videographer who goes and basically produces a filmed version of one of the games every week. And this particular week is going to be the matchup of Concordia versus Brutes.
Yeah.
So very cool to just have a women's game on film, which as the first one, that's going to be awesome. Your thoughts
Very
going into this
excited.
game in terms of, what you expect to see. Obviously, Concordia is the known team going
Yeah.
against Brutes, which are the up-and-comers, I guess you can say for now. So are you expecting domination? Are you expecting them to, like, Concordia to stand out? Is this going to be a closer game? What's your thoughts?
I think Maud Lacasse is going to struggle to move the ball the same way she did against strangers. I think that she'll have to take more chances than she did in the first game. Whereas I think Concordia are just a machine at this point. And we have a quarterback in um, we have a quarterback in Sarah Parker that can attack at all three levels, right? So it's not just necessarily moving with intermediate passes. It's not just necessarily taking shots downfield. She can literally attack at all levels. And the familiarity with her players, to me, is going to be the strength. For Brutes, like I said, we saw sort of what their makeup is. And I think Pontbriand is going to have to be the game breaker for them. But I think it's going to have to be more than just the intermediate. It's going to have to be more than just yards after the catch. We're going to have to see some bigger plays, kind of like we saw from Annabelle Chevrier in the first game. That's how I see it playing out. Eagle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can kind of see it being the same way. I think the overall experience of Concordia is probably going to be somewhat dominant. That being said, I think if there is going to be a team in the women's tier 1 that's going to show some of the flaws potentially in Concordia, it might be the Brutes. I don't think Les Bleus Flamand Rose and Bleu Pou are going to be as close. So definitely it's going to be a good challenge just to see exactly how good Concordia is as compared to the other teams and whether they're
Yeah.
going to be the chasers for the entire season or not.
Yeah, we'll see that, of course, after the video drops. We're not really doing picks this week because it's only you and I on the show. But what's your pick for this game?
I'm going to go with Concordia, and I'm going to put a score of 37 to 19.
All right, I'm going to go Concordia as well. I think it's going to be a pretty high flying game. I'm going to go with a score of 44-39.
Oh, wow. Really? That
I
high?
think it's going to be a barn burner. Barn burner. I'm very
Interesting.
excited.
Okay.
And plus, you know my feelings. Defense is stupid.
Defense. You keep saying that, but that's just because you don't know how to
I,
play
I
defense.
would I would rate defense under 40% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay. This brings us to our last segment here.
The mailbag. I'm very excited about this. So just so you know, on my screen, since I've come back, I can't see this. I can't see the shared screen anymore. I can't
Oh,
even see
wow.
you.
You've
It's
been
grayed out.
running
So,
blind this entire time?
oh yeah, 100%,
Oh
100%.
my god. And you didn't tell me.
And I now have an echo,
Now, yeah, because now you can actually see everything.
but I have an echo auditorially.
Well, that sucks to be you.
Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult. Let's do the mailbag.
All right. So mailbag. So these are questions that were sent in to us from our Instagram page. So do you want me to
I
stop?
can't.
Okay.
I don't know what to do. This
All
is
right.
dreadful.
We're gonna stop doing this. Here, I'm gonna do it without sound, so we can just this.
Yeah, I don't need to see anything. Just read me the questions. This is perfect.
Okay. This is good.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
All because I clicked back.
Building the ship as we fly. So we
Mhm.
have 10 questions, so let's not try to spend too much time on all of them here, but we want to get through them all. But we're going to go through them in the order they were submitted. So we're going to start with the first one here, which is submitted from @Manuel Alarroy with a general question of any tips for new teams?
So I'll start with this because again, every episode is someone's new episode. I started my FPF career on the worst team in FPF history. The team was called Punch Panda. Look it up. We were dreadful. The way that we got better was talking to experienced FPF players. You have the media, you have teams you play against. We post our finals. The finals are a great way to see what good teams do because they made the finals, and you get different angles. You get replays to see what successful teams do. Use that to build your offensive system. You don't need 50 plays. You need 4 to 5 plays in on any given week. Start with that. Build off of that. On defense, Eagle, what do you suggest?
I think on defense, the easiest thing to do is understand a system. The way I always look at it is if you're going to play man coverage, your biggest weakness is going to be your worst defender. If you play zone coverage, your biggest weakness is you operating as a unit. So you have to figure out the situation of which defense you want, at what point in time do you want it, and then understand who's responsible for what in those systems. Start very simple. Don't worry about disguising your coverage necessarily. Just start with a very simple system and go with that.
Absolutely.
All right, our next one is going to be from underscore Dobbsy, wanting us to comment
It could be anybody.
could be anybody. Wanted to comment about Will Power going 13 for 14 in a 7-touchdown game with Takeover.
Yeah, he's up for Ian. Ian Enebert, as we call him on the show. Look, Will has all of the physical tools to play quarterback in FPF. He's played the position before. He's played with very good play callers, so he's able to absorb knowledge really quickly. He's also a guy who's played in multiple flag leagues at varying divisions, and he's got sort of this understanding and this quest for knowledge. So it doesn't surprise me because usually you get one or the other, right? Especially in low divisions, you get guys who are physically capable or you get guys who are good play callers, but he has the benefit that he has both and he's adapted to that quickly.
All right. Our next
I'm also not going to say a bad word about my boy, right? Like,
no, I get it.
He's one of my close friends. So, but those are my thoughts anyway.
All right. Next one here is going to be from @DanLazara12. Who is the better candidate for quarterback of the year, Andrew Langbert or Jeremy White? And I imagine this refers to Division 3 with Sheesh and EZW being the ones he's referring to.
So the rule now is you can win an award if you didn't win in a higher division?
Yes, you get nominated, and you can get nominated for stuff if you're outside of it, yes.
But so Stephen Harpersod can win in Div 3, right?
Yes.
So we're forgetting the best quarterback in the division on purpose, or?
Do you find it's actually that, though? You find that's actually true?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay.
He's the best quarterback in the division. But let's give it to Jeremy White, because he's a nice guy. And he's got that ridiculous ability to buy time. And sure, if I'm not giving it to Stephen H, I'll give it to Jeremy White. Andrew Langbert, I think, will be in the mix as well, though. So it'll be fun. What do you say?
I don't care. I don't do awards.
Yeah, I know. Neither do I. It's the thing I care least about. I literally pulled myself out of that responsibility. But you have to pick a name. This is sports radio. LeBron or Jordan. You can't say you like both. That's illegal.
Why not?
Because it's illegal, dude. I don't make the rules of sports radio.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut the trophy in half, and then they can fight over which side's which.
King Solomon, I like it.
All right, next one is going to be from Cujo9, and it says, Gryffindor has been added to the Division 1 grouping, and how is that going to affect the schedule? So I know we mentioned it earlier. This is kind of a late update to it. This is, I think, Dan Lazara's squad featuring the usual group of the Controversy, Contraband, I don't know, other parodies of Mocon's name. So what are your thoughts in terms of Gryffindor and the impact that's going to be in Div 1?
So they were the team that was added late to, but no, but you're saying this is like who's on this roster exactly?
Yeah, so on this roster, actually, let's go check it out just so you can get a look at it because I know this
because I don't know if were they a team who just got moved into Division 1?
No. So they didn't register, and now they've basically been added. Exactly, yeah. So right now we actually don't have the roster specifically, but I know it's Dan Lazara's squad.
Oh, okay. So I'm less worried. I thought it was just a random team that could have literally been anybody. If Dan Lazara is throwing, they're going to be, if not championship relevant, at least hyper competent. But Dan Lazara is coming off his first spring championship, so I think they'll be good. I again, it's hard to say without knowing that and knowing what to make of the roster. I can't imagine Dan entered a bad roster. On your end, Eagle, you explained sort of how it's going to work, which is what the question actually was. So, yeah, I think we figured it out from an administrative standpoint, and I think they'll figure it out in the season.
All right. Our next one is from @Darius8. And this is a question regarding the new flag belts. So I know we've kind of had weird seasons in the past, right, where they haven't been full. We just completed the FPF Cup 2021 this past fall, but not everyone has played in it, obviously. And since the last full official FPF season, we've switched the flag belts from the triple threat, which was the belt with the 3 straps, into the pop ones, which are more the standard international flag belts that are used elsewhere with the pops. And so just a general question in terms of the flags and general reviews and feedback that people have gotten from it. My side, from a defense perspective, it's much harder because you can't just swipe at their waist to get the flag. You actually have to get the flag. So juking is much more powerful now.
In an offense that requires guys to get yards after the catch, I gotta say I love these flag belts. It's such an advantage for the offense. It's cool because look, this is the standard belt. In the past, you used to be able to just literally pull on the belt and all that would come undone. If you do that now, you're gonna get a holding penalty because I've had to do it, and a couple of times I've had to play defense, and it's literally been that or a touchdown because I've had a hard time grabbing these flags. But as an offensive player, man, I'm telling you, I love these flags. I love these flags. Thank you to whoever created them.
All right, our next one is going to be from I am the supervillain. So referring to the finessers in 4B being used as a mop to clean the floor, losing 39-0. Any thoughts?
I believe that is the what was it? The Brazilian. Well, I can't remember anything today. What was Bacalani's nickname?
The Mapanguara.
The Mafinguara, the Brazilian Mafinguara. I believe that to be his account. I can never understand finessers. I think Ryan Caruth just throws some routes too hard. He still throws too many tackle concepts, which is too safe. Given what guys can't get blown up in a flag game. They went up against a good team, right? Like so, Rinaldi throws the ball just as well for Honey Martin. That team having Iggy, having James Langshaw, Kareem Chilcott, William Power's not on that team, but the rest of those guys, that's a solid squad, man. That's a solid squad, and they have one of the best throwers of the football, along with the finessers, Ryan Caruth. So I don't. The finessers should always dominate every division they're in, and never seem to. So I hope they turn it around quickly.
Okay. Next is going to be from Dante Sparagna with a humble brag on his brother's behalf. The best dual threat quarterback in Division 5 is Santino Sparagna in a 12-point comeback win. My response to this is, why were you down by 12 points to begin with?
Well, because you only realize his dual threatness in the second half, obviously. The Sparagnas are really good, man. Honestly, this was not Dante. What's the dude's name?
Santino
Sparagna is absolutely double threat. They're both really good athletes, but like, where's the sibling rivalry? Like, why aren't you throwing your brother under the bus? Why aren't you saying you're the best Sparagna? What is it with siblings these days, man? Like back in my day, the only way you can eliminate sibling rivalry is having one kid.
Okay, what?
I'm tired, man. It's 4 hours.
It's true. All right, next one is from
That's my take,
Dak
dude.
Eagle. I wonder who that is. What's with those new pennies? If you haven't seen them yet, they are a checkered board of rainbows.
So I developed the Hot Sauce Sports jersey so that no one would have the same color scheme as us. And the first week, we played a team with almost the exact same color. I promise nobody will have the same color as these pennies. They are every color. They actually look kind of awesome. I got to say, I thought I'd hate them more than I would. They look better than the disgusting ones we've had up to this point. So I got to say, they actually look not terrible. Hopefully they'll be washed.
Second to last one at Iggy Man saying, Honey Martin, 8 no false kings. Thoughts?
Why 8 no? Don't we play 10 games? Are they going to just forfeit 2 games? So 8-2?
What? What are you talking about?
He said 8-0.
No, ain't no false kings.
Oh, well, that's false. We all know they're false kings. So like, some roster improvements because obviously they weren't good enough in the first place, right? That's why they made roster improvements. But I would say no, I stand by it. They've not yet proven to not be false kings. They beat a team that were basically used as mops, as the Mapangora said, right? So I think they're pretty false. We'll have to check on their schedule as the season goes on. Eagle, what are your thoughts?
I usually run metrics and analytics about halfway through the season, so we'll find out. Is
Gut
kind of the
check.
way I look at it.
Gut
Yeah.
check. Let's do it. What is it?
My gut check is they're going to be false kings, just because that's been the tradition. So
There we go. Once you earn the crown, you heavy is the crown. Man, I'm not making sense anymore. Let's end.
it's
Is
fine.
there anything else?
We have
Can we end the
one
show?
last one, and
Oh
I
my
think
god,
this
I'm
is
dying.
the example of how to engage with us in the media team. So this is from @Ben Levy saying, "Can you talk about new teams?" So Ben, just for you, I have looked up your profile on our site, and I know you are playing for the Flamingos. So congratulations. We're going to do a quick analysis of the Flamingos because you've managed to get your name in our show. So Division 6, Flamingos played against Toon Squad, 12-7 in this game. Is that Ari Itowich? Went 7 for 17, 1 for 1, 59 yards. Ben Levy carrying the offensive duties. Good job there. Also carrying the defense with 3 tackles and 2 interceptions. So clearly making yourself a household name already. That's awesome. Any
This is
thoughts on this game? Div 6.
This is Div 6. Okay, I'm starting to do my write up for this week. So first of all, Ben, nice to meet you, dude. I'm covering your division. You know, great game. You should have caught more than half your targets, but let's pretend it's the quarterback's fault. But as a quarterback, I'm never going to do that. So I'm just doing that for your benefit. They had a tough challenge in the first week. They go up against a team that has Gardner Ross as a competent quarterback, Charles Presser, who's a very good two-way player, who scored and got an interception, right? So clearly a tough task for them, and they only allowed 12 points. So I'm curious to see how they're going to how they're going to fare in their game against Wild Hogs this week. I'm kind of excited about this team because they basically are a group of completely new players, right? So we don't know what to make of it. It's what makes covering Division 6 so challenging. It's why you have the head of FPF Media covering Division 6, because it's a really tough task because there's so many unknowns. So I do wish them good luck. I do hope their jerseys are pink. If they're not pink, the hell are you doing? Like, you can't call yourself Flamingos and not have a pink jersey. So hopefully you made the right decisions by ordering the right color, and that'll allow you to win games. That's all the analysis I can make because I haven't seen you play yet. I will do my best to make it out to see every Div 6 team before the end of the season, but scheduling is tough because players don't all play in the same field at the same time, so we'll have to see how that shakes out. I will get information from the scorekeepers, other players, and you can also feel free to reach out to us. Tell us about your game. Tell me about your game. I'd love to hear it. I love talking flag very clearly. I've done so for 3 straight hours, and now I'm exhausted.
And that's going to be our show for this week. Thank you, Mo Khan, for letting us talk, just the two of us.
Dick. Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing at the show. I'm just
exhausted.
exhausted.
It's been fun to be back. Let's just say that.
Oh, it's a blast. It's a blast. And Eagle, it's been fun to have you contribute to content more this way. Just what people don't understand is the things we have to do to keep the show running. It's hard to do it just the two of us.
So much going on behind the scenes here.
So not only for me, where I now need to lead the show and also analyze things on the fly, because Mo will usually set me up. And like, I don't even enjoy to do it this way because I can't make the jokes and things that I typically do. I am happy we got to do that game though, because it was ridiculous. Yeah. So I do enjoy the ridiculousness of it. And Eagle, on your end, you're constantly looking stuff up for us while doing the production.
Sets. You guys can't see this, but there's a literal studio here of all the equipment and everything. So, yeah. This will be our new home for the next few weeks as we get ready for the rest of the season. Mo and Peas are going to be here. We'll have the full setup. We'll have guest interviews. We'll probably call a few of you up, get a few questions in, might as well. The mailbox will still be open for future weeks. Thank you for contributing. Honestly, a fun segment. Like doing that. So more of that to come in the future for sure.
That was awesome. So for those who have tuned in for this hour, thank you. For those who've followed us on YouTube, please continue to do so. Get us also on wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify,
Apple Podcast, Google Casting, directly on
all
Podbean,
big
which is
ones.
where we're hosted for that matter.
Yeah, all the big ones were there. So if you want to listen to your cars and you don't want to use up all your streaming on YouTube, makes a ton of sense. So get us auditorially. Um, for those who have stuck around for all 3 hours, thank you, Eagle, for all the work you've done today. Thank you, Mo, for nothing, but most of all, thank you all for letting me be myself. Can I take off my pants?
No, leave them on.